Chapter 874. Sudden departure of Rowena. After Michael cleared out the beasts of fire realm, Gaia landed beside him. Rowena quickly emptied a bottle of healing potion of her own before Michael could give her a blood tonic. Her hand was completely drenched in blood. Thanks to the healing potion, the scars, bruises, and the wound on her shoulder quickly healed as the rosiness to her face slowly returned. The trio waited for the shadow monster to approach them instead of rushing toward it. While the shadow monster was on its way to Michael, he noticed a bright light on the horizon behind the monster. The entire sky above the horizon slowly grew brighter and brighter to the point Gaia had to cover her eyes. "He started his tribulation," said Rowena. Michael didn't give a damn about Noah's tribulation. Instead, he was focused on killing the shadow monster. It would finally give him enough experience points to trigger his own tribulation to reach the half-celestial stage. Of course, he had to upgrade his system before triggering the tribulation, but once he had reached level 10 of the immortal stage, he would have the power of half-celestial stage without reaching the stage whenever he took his complete form. He always had a feeling Ethan's curse was a blessing in disguise. But deep down, one question kept nagging Michael: who actually cursed Ethan? The curse was powerful enough to possess sentience as well as the ability to teleport them from one realm to another. He wondered what kind of powerful being was able to create such a monstrosity. Interrogating the shadow monster was out of the question, and Michael had too many things on his plate to track down the curse's origin. Now that Sadie turned Noah's elites into one of their spies, Michael would be able to know everything Noah learns. Michael doubted Noah would let go of the man who cursed his father. Despite Noah's rule against killing, Michael saw the killing intent in his eyes. He saw the old Noah who slaughtered arrogant young masters and their families without remorse. "Do we still need Noah's aid in defeating the monster?" Rowena asked Michael. Judging by the overwhelming power radiation coming from Michael, she didn't think they needed Noah. Once she could freeze the monster, she knew he would take care of the monster all by himself. Unfortunately, freezing the monster was not as easy as it sounded. "Just like I said. I distract the monster. You freeze it," Michael reminded Rowena again. She nodded and clenched the blades tighter. The icy blue cold flames danced around Rowena's blades, taking the form of small coiling dragons. This was the first time Michael had seen these flames take such form. Looking at them made him wonder if his dark flames could take shapes or forms. "Dark Lord." The shadow monster suddenly roared, uttering Michael's name. Its thunderous roar shook the entire fire realm and caused several volcanoes to explode. Michael himself was completely stunned by the monster's roar. From the moment he laid his eyes on the monster, he felt like the monster had deep hatred toward him. Now the roar confirmed his suspicion. The shadow monster definitely had it for him. However, the thought that a god was behind everything never came across his mind. "That's new. I think you pissed the ugly off by taking it out of its host," said Gaia. "The more it focuses on me, the easier it will be for you to freeze it," Michael said to Rowena. He didn't worry about the shadow monster anymore. In fact, he was excited to finish it off. By reaching the half-celestial stage, he could finally start taking down the Great Eight clans one by one. The era of the Dark Lord was about to begin. Letting out another roar, the shadow monster dashed toward Michael. Once it was just 10 meters away from Michael, Gaia leaped into the air and knocked a golden arrow into her bow. On the other hand, Rowena prepared herself to join the fight against the monster with Michael. It was not a battle of wits or strategies. Rather, this was a battle of rage and power. Not the smartest, but the strongest would survive. "Keep your distance from it at all times," Michael warned Gaia as she nodded. Just as Michael planned, he dashed at the monster, and on his way, he opened his arms as the dark swords flew straight into his arms. Rowena thought he was about to use the swords. However, he just unsheathed the swords and leaped into the air. In mid-air, he flicked his wrist as the Doombringer materialized in his hand. Rowena raised her blades, sending the frost dragons toward the monster. At the same time, Michael clenched the Doombringer tighter as the ancient ice core imbued with the warhammer fired a stream of bone-chilling ice upon the monster from above. Rowena didn't expect Ghost to possess such a weapon. He always fought using swords, and seeing him use the warhammer felt odd. The monster's top, where the ice stream from the Doombringer hit, got covered in a thin layer of ice. But the ice layer was not strong enough to freeze the monster as it shattered in a blink of an eye. A couple of things happened at once. 1. Michael flew above the monster, trying to freeze it with the Doombringer's frost. 2. He evaded the shadow monster's dark spikes. 3. Rowena ran around the monster while it was focused on Michael and fired a constant stream of cold flames. Just looking at the monster's ethereal body told Gaia that she could be no help to Michael. So instead of being in harm's way, she flew away from the monster. She gained enough altitude to watch the entire battlefield. If there was a glass wraith or a crow who tried to intervene, it was her task to take them down. As Michael was battling the monster, the light rays on the horizon lost their glimmer. She would be lying if she said the thought of messing with Noah's heavenly tribulation didn't come across her mind. Since Michael gave her no order to do such a thing, she restrained herself from flying to Noah's tribulation and interrupting it. The shadow monster managed to attack Rowena using its ethereal fist, except Michael interrupted the attack with the black shield. Gaia noticed the cold flames slowly creating a layer of ice around the monster's center. As a result, the monster gradually became slow and vulnerable for Michael to attack. Rowena expected Michael to attack the monster's belly, but he chose not to. She threw him a doubtful glare. "Not the right time," said Michael. The battle between them lasted for almost 3 hours. Gaia watched Rowena almost die a couple of times, and if it wasn't for Michael's intervention, she would have been in big trouble. But that didn't surprise Gaia. What surprised her was how Michael and Rowena fought the shadow monster. They fought with such precision and coordination as they trained together for decades. They understood each other in the heat of the battle without words. Michael's power grew stronger as the fire realm turned darker. Finally, after 3 hours of intense battle, half of the shadow monster's body was frozen by the cold flames. "Dark Lord!" The monster roared once again as Michael landed right in front of it. For a moment, Michael locked his gaze with the monster's glowing red eyes. The monster fired dark spikes at him as he slowly made his way to the monster. He blocked the dark spikes with the black shield and clenched the Doombringer tighter with the other hand. Rowena breathed heavily and stood back, regaining her strength. After the long 3 hours of battle, she was exhausted. Using cold flames continuously took a toll on her body. Her legs shivered and begged her to give up. When Michael reached just an arm's reach from the monster, he retracted the shield into the space ring, held the Doombringer with both his hands, and swung it with all his might. Boom! The Doombringer hit the shadow monster and shattered the frozen core of the monster. Gaia saw a hole in the monster's body as it roared in pain. Gaia closed her ears due to the intensity of the roar. To their surprise, the monster grew smaller in size and weakened. It went from half celestial stage level 3 to level 2. But before they could rejoice, the hole in the monster's body closed itself. "You gotta be kidding me," Rowena muttered with fury. After witnessing the monster heal itself, Michael immediately leaped away from it. As much as he would like to have another way of defeating the monster, there was none. The only way they had was to shatter its core until it could no longer heal itself, just like the glass wraiths. Meanwhile, Gaia noticed a couple of glass wraiths on the horizon, along with a flock of giant crows. She had to fly away from Michael to hunt them down before they could intervene in the battle. Noah could have used the heavenly flames to attack the monster's frozen core if he was also there with them. In that case, the shadow monster would have grown smaller and weaker. Michael didn't have a clue how long Noah's heavenly tribulation would be, but he didn't think it was a good idea to rely on Noah. He preferred to take down the shadow monster by himself with only Rowena's help. That way, he could earn more badass points and deal the last death blow to the monster. The last thing Michael needed was Noah to steal his experience points. After Michael landed beside Rowena, the shadow monster remained still for a moment as though it was thinking something. "Heal yourself. The battle is a long way from over," said Michael. "Where is that old woman, by the way? If we were teleported, there is a good chance everyone in the hall was too." Only then did the sudden realization hit Rowena. Her mother was standing in the hall with them. If they were all teleported, her mother would have ended up in the fire realm somewhere. Just the thought of her mother wandering in the life-ending realm shook Rowena to the core. "I have to find my mother," said Rowena. She didn't even bother to wait for Michael's response as Rowena flew away from Michael at lightning speed. "The system did not see that coming," the system sarcastically said. Chapter 875. End of the long battle. After Rowena left the area to search for her mother, Michael, and Gaia was left with the shadow monster alone. Michael wasn't afraid of being alone. On the contrary, he felt relieved to fight the monster alone. Granted, freezing the monster with the Doombringer would take way longer than with the cold flames, but he could comfortably land the last strike on the monster in the end. Suppose Rowena or Noah was here, and their strikes took down the monster. All of his experience points would go down the drain. Michael needed those points to reach the half-celestial stage. "Keep those beasts off my back," Michael said, looking at Gaia in the air. As he prepared for the battle, the shadow monster dashed at him. This time, the shadow monster seemed really pissed off at him. The monster's eyes glowed brighter than before with intense hatred and rage. Two fists materialized over the monster's head and moved at high speed toward Michael. Michael's cat-like reflex made him raise the black shield and block both the shadow hands. The ground around him cracked open due to sheer force as Michael held off the monster's hands with his black shield. The shadow monster kept one hand on the shield and tried to punch him with the other. Michael quickly hit the ground with the Doombringer, creating an ice wall between him and the fist. The fist shattered the wall and sent Michael flying backward. However, Michael comfortably landed on his feet and cracked his neck. He was totally unharmed by the shadow monster's attack. Now that Michael had fought the monster for 4 hours, he had a pretty good idea about the monster's capabilities. As a result, he calculated the monster's moves and avoided its attacks without breaking a sweat. Of course, the monster seldom came up with new attacks and made Michael spill some blood. But overall, Michael had the upper hand in the battle. Despite everything, Michael knew he couldn't go on longer with the battle. Even the Dark Lord had his limits and eventually would grow exhausted. Hence, Michael poured all his energy into the Doombringer and fired a constant stream of bone-chilling ice at the shadow monster. Once he cast the lightning dash, Michael almost turned invisible. He ran around the monster, trying to freeze it. Although the ancient ice core could freeze a core formation cultivator to death in a minute, it couldn't hold a torch to the cold flames. Compared to the ancient ice core, the cold flames could freeze one in a second. The power gap between the ice core and the cold flames was huge. Simply put, Michael knew he had to spend days if Rowena hadn't returned to the monster and helped him with the cold flames. An entire day passed as Michael spent his time battling the shadow monster. All this time, it took him an entire day to freeze the shadow monster's core with the Doombringer. Once he had completely frozen the center, he covered his fist with the dark flames and punched the monster, shattering its core yet again. The monster roared with the large hole in its shadowy body. As a result, its cultivation power dropped from half-celestial level 2 to level 1. After 2 more days, Michael finally managed to bring the shadow monster to the immortal stage. Thanks to all the potions and pills, Michael continuously fought the monster for 3 days. Meanwhile, Noah was facing his heavenly tribulation on the other side of the fire realm. Now that the shadow monster had become immortal, Michael easily avoided all its attacks. However, it took him longer than he liked to freeze the damn thing. Luckily, Rowena returned to him when the sun rose in the horizon. "You found your mother?" Michael asked Rowena. "Yes," Rowena nodded. "Sorry for leaving you all of a sudden," Rowena apologized to Michael. Normally, Rowena wouldn't apologize to anyone except to her family members. But she broke that rule and said sorry to Michael without realizing he was not her family. Michael just shrugged it off and raised his Doombringer, sending a steam of bone-chilling ice. Rowena joined him this time as the cold flames merged with the steam of ice. Even from afar, Gaia felt the sudden chilliness in the air. She could even see her own breath before her eyes. The ice from the cold flames and the ancient ice core rapidly formed a layer of ice in the monster. Michael and Rowena slowly moved forward as the monster was pushed backward. It screamed and roared, slowly getting frozen in its core. "Remember, it's my kill," Michael warned Rowena. She wasn't going to argue with him as she knew he deserved to land the final killing blow. After all, he was the one who had been fighting the shadow monster for days. Once, the shadow monster's core turned into a crystal which Michael punched with enough force to shatter completely. As the battle continued, Michael and Rowena repeated the same process of freezing its core and shattering it with brute force. Eventually, Michael and Rowena managed to freeze the shadow monster's entire body. Since the sun had fallen down, the darkness enveloped the world. As a result, Michael was at his peak power. Looking at the fragile monster, he knew it would only take one more punch to kill the monster once and for all. Gaia watched Michael walking toward the monster with the dark flames coiling around his fist excitedly. "Dark Lord," the shadow monster muttered. Its voice turned into a whisper as it stuck within bone-chilling ice. Ignoring the monster's words, Michael punched the monster as fast as he could. He didn't want Noah to appear out of thin air and end the monster's life. If that happened, Michael would definitely lose his calm and go berserk on Noah's entire family. Luckily for Noah, he was still facing his heavenly tribulation. Finally, Michael punched the shadow monster, shattering its entire body. As soon as the shadow monster flew into countless glassy shards, Michael felt an intense surge of power within him. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a half-celestial level 3 cursed shadow monster. The reward is 5 million experience points and 100,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 60,000 badass points. The system has stored the experience points needed to reach the half-celestial stage in the storage and will keep them until the host upgrades the system to version 9.0. Congratulations to the host for killing a half-celestial being for the first time. As a reward, the system has gifted the host with a legendary gift box. The system filled Michael's vision and head with the system notifications. Michael felt the excitement coursing through his veins when he received a legendary gift box. Whenever he received a legendary gift box, it boosted his power to another level. Thus, he couldn't wait to get alone and open the box. But first, he needed to deal with Rowena. "We did it," Gaia said, landing beside Michael. "We held up our bargain, Holy Maiden. We lifted the curse off your father. When you return to him, hell be good as new," said Michael. "I know you agreed to do it because of what I did back in Mazeroth. But by saving my father, you saved my family. I will not forget this," said Rowena. Michael didn't say anything for a moment. He slowly turned around and looked in the direction of Hell City. "If you ever feel like you have to do something for me in return, pay close attention to what Skyhall does behind your back. I am not the real villain as your brother and his guild believe," Michael warned Rowena as he slowly ascended into the air. "They should back off while I still have my patience." Once I crossed that line dash, Michael didn't finish his sentence. Instead, he let Rowena fill in the rest. As he reached higher and higher, Rowena saw the sky and the area around turn pitch black. The dark flames shrouded his body, raising the temperature in the air. He shocked Rowena with his power. At that moment, Rowena felt power radiation several times stronger than the shadow monster from him. The stormy clouds gathered above him and rumbled. When she looked at Michael, Rowena saw the lightning streaks in the dark sky. They felt like an ominous warning for whoever intended to cross his path. To be honest, Rowena had never felt such intense power. "We will meet again," said Rowena. Michael looked at her without uttering a word before disappearing into the dark clouds. The darkness gradually faded away after he left the area. After he disappeared, Rowena looked in the direction of bright light rays and flew straight toward them. While Rowena was on her way to Noah's tribulation, Michael headed straight to Hell City. One would expect him to be happy. But on the contrary, he had a frown on his face. Even Gaia didn't know what just happened that wiped off the smile she just saw a few seconds ago. Without uttering a word, he just headed straight to Hell City for some reason. The city was located on the other side of the realm and far from where Michael defeated the shadow monster. What's going on? Gaia asked the questions countless times, but Michael remained silent. Only when Gaia saw the outskirts of Hell City did Gaia realize why Michael headed straight here. She heard a powerful humming in the air followed by a crisp ding like someone had plucked a vina string. Is that Angel's vina? Gaia couldn't help questioning herself. There was nothing except Angel's vina could have created such a powerful buzz in the air. Gaia could feel the violent energy fluctuations around her. The closer they got to Hell City, the louder the buzz sounded. If that wasn't enough, Gaia vaguely saw a figure floating above Hell City, covered in an emerald green light. I am sick of chasing you around, bitch. Gaia heard a thunderous roar echoing through the fire realm. You are coming with me, dead or alive. The angry guy shouted, loud enough to cause tremors in the ground. In his fury, he failed to notice the sky turning darker. Anger blinded him from seeing his death coming in the form of the Dark Lord. Chapter 876. The Dark Lord's promise to Layla Alden DBS and AHSS will be resumed from 20th this month and Roll 2 will be updated from April 1st. Somewhere in the realm of sea folks, a couple of figures roamed around in a dungeon-like room with bluish lamps and chairs. This dungeon extended part way under the ocean, giving the light in the room a blue tinge. The room had lots of low-backed black and dark blue leather sofas, skeletons of giant fish, and dark wood cupboards. One of the wooden tables had a bowl filled with blood on it. The room had quite a grand atmosphere but also quite a cold one. One of the heads of House Gladrath sat before the glass window and glanced at the bustling city before him. This underwater city made any city on the land pale in comparison. Hundreds or even thousands of buildings built with glass and lit with luminescent mushrooms gave the entire city a grand appearance. From afar, one could see the sparkling dome around the city, keeping the ocean water from flooding. Not that the sea folk couldn't breathe underwater, but many buildings could not withstand such pressure. They would shatter into pieces if the dome didn't exist. After all, the city was located at the bottom of the ocean. One who wasn't a sea folk would not survive the ocean's pressure despite their cultivation level. Only a higher up in the sea folk hierarchy could bring outsider to the city, and even then, the visitor must be at least a fusion stage cultivator. Otherwise, the sheer pressure would crush their organs to a pulp, turning them into a bloody mess. We might get some backlash if the land walkers heard of our recent actions, Grizzle, said a man with large eyes, fish-like mouth, and hands with thin skin between fingers, which enabled the seal folk to move through the ocean swiftly. What do you think they would do? Weak doesn't fight back, Gleeless, said Grizzle. Grizzle was one of the sea folk kind who had the head and upper body of an elf and the tail of a fish. Their bodies were built to swim through the ocean faster than any kind, and while they were in spaces without water, they would float above the ground. Those who broke through the core strengthening stage could transform their tails into legs and grow wings to fly. However, the proud and traditional members chose not to, as they thought transforming their bodies was a sin. Grizzle's kind was called the Mermans, one of the ancient races in the sea folk realm. Currently, Grizzle and Gleeless were plotting against the House of Halrid. The sea folk race had 3 superpowers among them, 2 were part of the Great 8 clans. The 2 great clans were the Water God Hall and Sea Serpent Hall. Although Arctic Hall was a powerful clan, it wasn't a Great 8 clan. It didn't become a Great 8 clan mainly because it was divided into 3 houses, the House of Halrid, the House of Gladrath, and the House of Big Mag. Mutrad, the recent subordinate of Michael, hailed from the House of Halrid. The higher-up in the Arctic Hall ordered him to apprehend the Dark Lord. But due to the internal conflict within the 3 houses, catching the Dark Lord went down on their priority list. The main reason for this conflict was House Gladrath's hatred toward House Halrid and their hunger for power. The 2 houses always hated each other and had tension between them. Thanks to Grizzle's recent discovery, he found a way to gain the upper hand over the House of Halrid as well as the House of Big Mag. Unfortunately, his discovery required someone's blood, the blood of a spirit child. Would you please relax, Gleeless? Looking at the worried look on Gleeless' face, Grizzle reassured him with a carefree smile. I have my doubts about Eratos. He is not right in the head, and you know it. Besides, he is a human. How can we trust a human with a pivotal task such as this, Grizzle? Gleelis questioned Grizzle. He is a human. That's exactly why I sent him instead of one of ours. But don't forget Eratos' history with the child's mother. The rage within him drives him to do whatever is necessary, said Grizzle. You are yet to tell me why you ordered him to bring the mother instead of the child, Gleelis asked Grizzle. Grizzle let out a foxy smile before flicking his wrist. A silver platter holding 2 glasses and a bottle of wine hovered toward them. Grizzle picked up the bottle and poured the wine into the glasses. Then, he handed one glass to Gleelis and floated to the window. His friend followed him behind and joined him, looking through the window. So? Gleelis tilted his head to the sight. I sent someone the child trusts like its family to bring it here. Eratos just had to ensure there were no loose ends, Grizzle shocked Gleelis. Did you really think I would trust Eratos with the child? Everyone knows he is not right in the head. It made him the perfect person to deal with the child's mother, but when it comes to the spirit child, I won't let him near it anywhere, said Grizzle. Grizzle took a long sip of wine and looked at the children swimming around his citadel. Some of the children waved at him as he waved back. On the outside, no one would expect Grizzle to be so cruel. In reality, Grizzle was one of the most dangerous and evil men in the entire sea folk realm. Unfortunately, an innocent spirit child ended up in his target circle. What about Mutrad, Grizzle? Is he anywhere close to catching him? What if he learns about all this? We cannot let him step into our world. Gleelis' eyes glimmered with fear as he uttered these words. The child and the mother are not in the mortal realm. One is in the fire realm and the other in the Ukulun realm. Gleelis heaved a sigh of relief after hearing Grizzle. The last time he heard, the one he feared the most was in the mortal realm. Gleelis was one of the few who were terrified of the prophecy and the stories behind that man. Many, like Grizzle, never believed in those stories and prophecies. Instead, they believed he was just a man who could be killed if the push came to a shove. Like I always say, Gleelis. We don't have to fear him even if he comes into our world. He is just a mortal who bleeds. And if he bleeds, we can kill him, Grizzle snickered. I know you don't believe in the prophecies. But all I am telling you is, do not underestimate him. Why are we suddenly talking about the Dark Lord? Grizzle rolled his eyes. He abandoned his child and its mother a long time ago. Except for us and probably the Supreme Guardian, no one knew the Dark Lord had a spirit child with Layla Alden. Contrary to what everyone says, I think that human is incompetent to be the Supreme Guardian. Why else he left the mother and child alone instead of taking them into custody? Grizzle took another sip of wine and continued questioning Gleelis. Unlike Grizzle's thought, Noah left Layla and the spirit child alone, knowing they could do nothing to help him catch the Dark Lord. Furthermore, Noah didn't want the child to be branded as the Dark Spawn and live his life like the enemy of the world. Instead, Noah wanted the child to have a normal childhood and life as he had. But despite Noah's all good-hearted thoughts, he made the mistake of removing the spider from the spirit child's neck. He intended to erase all the Dark Lord's influence on the child, including the spying contraption. By destroying the spider, Noah secluded the child from everyone else, including the Dark Lord. Since he removed the spider and assigned guardians to monitor Rainbow Island, Azazel could not keep an eye on Harry. When Azazel reported losing the feed to Harry and Layla to Michael, he told Azazel to leave them alone. Michael ensured no one except Noah knew about the spirit child. At first, Michael wanted to sneak into a Rainbow Island, rig the place with spiders and continue to keep Layla and Harry in surveillance. In fact, he managed to sneak past the guardians and reached Layla. But when Layla met Michael, her eyes blazed with fear. She didn't even let Harry see Michael's face. When Michael approached her, she asked him to leave them alone for the sake of Harry's safety and made him promise he wouldn't interfere with Harry's life as Michael initially told her. To be honest, Michael didn't blame Layla for thinking they were better off without him because that was true. That day before he left for Gondolin, Michael cut all his connections with Layla and left them alone. So one could only imagine how pissed off the Dark Lord would be when he learns the plot against Layla and Harry. Maybe he didn't want to piss off the Dark Lord, Gleelis muttered. Don't be a spineless coward, Gleelis. Once we use the spirit child's blood to locate the artifacts, we will be strong enough to become a great 8 clan. This is our ancestors' plan, and we will not fail them, Grizzle firmly said. His eyes were filled with confidence and resolve. No matter what happened or who stood in his way, Grizzle would never back off from his plan. He had been working too hard for too long to abandon everything because of some children's stories about the god of darkness. As Grizzle was discussing his plans with his best friend, he heard a voice in his head. My lord, Eratos has located Layla Alden in the Fire Realm. He is on his way to apprehend her, Grizzle heard the voice of his subordinate. These words put a bright smile on Grizzle's face. Eratos found Layla, Gleelis, Grizzle told his friend with a smile. Gleelis couldn't help feeling excitement coursing through his veins. If Grizzle successfully completed the ritual, there would be nothing to stop them from becoming a great 8 clan. He just hoped the Dark Lord would be in the dark, knowing nothing about the disappearance of the spirit child and its mother. But little did he know the Dark Lord was on his way to Eratos with a god's vengeance. Chapter 877, Layla Alden, Please Marry Me. A long time ago, when the sun slowly peeped over the Rainbow Island, birds shook the morning dew off their feathers and gave a cheerful song that would lift even the most sorrowful spirits. A light mist wrapped around the lone mountain where Layla resided, reaching to touch every bit of life thriving there. The slight chill in the air was enough to give a gentle shiver but not enough for the need for a fire. A breeze tickled the trees, making their leaves shake and sway with laughter. Golden sunlight slowly seeped in past the thick canopy of branches with hopes of being able to reach the damp mountain earth. The heaven-touching apex of the mountain was drenched in brilliant light. Inside the cave at the top of the mountain, Layla was cultivating in silence. She cancelled all the sounds of birds singing, slowly breeze rustling the trees, and the distant shouts of the natives. While Layla was cultivating, her disciples Johanna, Nerida, and Megan focused on cleaning the cave and their Venas. Despite their young age, these 3 little girls moved swiftly through the cave and cleaned the place. After they put some fragrant incense sticks around, they came in front of Layla, bent down, and touched Layla's feet to get her blessings. Layla was everything to the 3 girls. They were with Layla as her disciples for as long as they could remember. With Layla around, the girls never felt like orphans. Under Layla's tutelage, they reached the body refining stage at such a young age. They weren't anything like prodigies or something, but Layla's guidance and the resources she provided made a difference in their cultivation speed. Just as the little girls were about to head out, they saw a shadow on the ground and looked at the cave mouth to see several people descending from the sky. The moment the girls saw these men, they trembled in fear. They quickly stepped closer to Megan, the red-haired girl with pretty freckles sprinkled on her face. Among them, Megan was the toughest and always had their back. When Layla wasn't around, Megan always went into the forest to hunt and hone her combat skills. Layla was yet to teach them how to defend themselves using a Vena, but she didn't stop Megan from training with swords and bows. Since Layla was cultivating, Megan strolled out to meet these unwelcomed visitors. The group landed at the cave entrance with 4 guards armed to the teeth and 2 men dressed in fancy golden robes. One of them was a middle-aged man with a bushy beard, short dark hair with strands of white hair, and blue eyes. Meanwhile, the man standing next to the middle-aged man was a stunning young man with striking golden hair. He would make any young girl's heart skip a beat with his perfect jaw and clean-shaven face. The young man's hazel eyes glowed with life and excitement as the most attractive feature about the young man was perhaps his slightly pointy ears he inherited from his elven father. But something crooked hid underneath all the handsome face and perfectly built body. Unlike the 3 girls, this young man was a prodigy. He reached the core strengthening stage at the age of 20 and was said to be the most desired man on the continent of Ar. Hundreds or even thousands of proposals were sent to the young man's home every single day, but he chose none because he had already lost his heart to the wielder of Angel Vena, Layla Alden. "Hello, girls," the middle-aged man greeted the 3 girls with obvious disdain in his eyes. He was born and raised as a rich noble. In his eyes, street urchins like these three girls were beyond disgusting, and just talking to them made him want to throw up. He still had a hard time coping with the fact that his daughter was raising these orphans on her own instead of marrying into one of the many noble families in Gondolin. Lord Nobert, Megan lowered her head and greeted her mentor's father with respect despite how she thought about him in her heart. To be honest, Megan would choose to be an orphan any day than be Nobert's daughter. He was an alcoholic, gambler, wastrel, an arrogant fool who hated everyone who wasn't noble by birth. "Is she there?" Nobert asked bluntly. "Mistress is cultivating at the moment and ordered us to let no one inside," said Megan. Despite facing people who could kill her with a snap of their fingers, the brave little girl had no signs of fear in her eyes. Seeing the girl facing them without covering down made Nobert's blood boil. Every single cell in his body screamed at him to throw the little girl off the mountain. But he had to restrain himself, thinking about what Layla would do. The relationship between him and Layla was already broken, and preferred not to damage it any more than he had already. "You can tell us her father is here to meet her, or I can meet her in person," Nobert creased his brows and said. He didn't sound like he was telling them but rather ordering them. However, Megan remained firm in not letting them through. Her mentor gave her an order, and Megan didn't plan to fail. "I am afraid you cannot meet the mistress today. You can leave a message with us if you want," said Megan. The veins in Nobert's eyes popped, making his eyes red like a demon's. He could no longer take such disrespect from a street urchin like Megan. He immediately stepped forward with his hands raised in the air. "You filthy rat," Megan's instincts kicked in as she raised her hand to defend herself. As Nobert's hand was about to slap Megan, a powerful melody resonated through the cave and pushed the group several steps back. One of the guards almost slipped off the edge and fell to his death. Nerida and Johanna heaved a sigh of relief as they saw Layla walk out of the cave gracefully. If a gaze could kill, Nobert, his guards, and the youngster would have died almost instantly. Her cold and murderous gaze swept across the group, making the guards shudder in fear. They were strong but not as strong as Layla Alden, the wielder of Angel Vina. When Layla exited the cave, Johanna and Nerida ran behind Layla and stood close to her. Meanwhile, Megan stood beside Layla as though she was Layla's loyal guard. "You haven't changed a bit," Layla coldly said. "I could say the same to you," said Nobert as the youngster stood there mesmerized by Layla's beauty. His eyes sparkled with his heartbeat rapidly rising. Anyone could tell the young man was madly in love with Layla. Unfortunately, the feeling wasn't mutual at all. "Why are you here?" Layla completely ignored the young man and coldly asked her father. "Does a father need a reason to see his daughter?" Nobert answered Layla's question with another question. "We both know that doesn't apply to you," Layla snickered. For a few moments, Nobert didn't utter a single word. Silence fell over them. Megan felt extremely uncomfortable and furious when she noticed how the youngster was staring at her teacher. "We should talk alone," Nobert said and threw a glance with disdain at Layla's disciples. "Whatever you want to talk to me, you have 2 minutes," said Layla. Granted, Layla was not very talkative and friendly, but she seemed colder toward her father. If one had a good perception, they could see the anger and contempt in Layla's eyes. It was a clear indication of the hostility she had toward her father. Ever since Layla's mother died in a mysterious accident, Layla hated Nobert to the core. Although there was no evidence to prove it wasn't an accident, Layla had reasons to believe Nobert actually orchestrated her mother's death so he could marry another woman. Nobert pretended to have his heart broken by his first wife's death. Yet, he married another woman within a month and had a baby girl named Edith the next month. In other words, Nobert was with another woman while Layla's mother was still alive. Layla suspected that her mother found out Nobert was cheating on her, and when she confronted him, he killed her. As in the Alden family, there was a strict rule against marrying another woman when one's spouse was still alive. Furthermore, Layla had seen bruises and swelling in her mother's body. Layla didn't believe her mother's story about how she fell off the steps or fought with a boar when they went hunting. If Layla hadn't made a promise to her mother that she wouldn't hurt Nobert, he would have been 6 feet under the moment Layla suspected he was beating her mother. Nobert was really lucky that Layla hadn't broken the promise even after her mother died. Nobert gritted his teeth as Layla saw the glimpse of the beast hiding within him. She could tell he wanted to raise his hand and beat her, just like how she beat her mother. The only reason why he held back was unlike her mother, she wasn't weak. Very well, Nobert exhaled and looked her in the eyes. I gave my word to young Master Eratos here that I would marry you to him. As soon as these words escaped Nobert's mouth, Layla's anger exploded like a raging volcano. The murderous aura radiated from Layla made everyone tremble. She was shivering as her eyes turned blood red. The sheer guts it took her father to say this to her face. She was mad beyond limits. Nobert held his ground without showing any signs of fear. Layla, Eratos took a step forward with a gentle smile. She slowly turned her murderous gaze away from her father to Eratos. I have been in love with you since the moment I laid my eyes on you. You are the only woman who stole my heart, Layla. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Layla Alden, please marry me. Eratos dropped to one knee, flicked his wrist as a diamond ring appeared in his hand, and extended it toward Layla. You have 3 seconds to leave before I rip you all to shreds. Eratos and the others were stunned by Layla's words. The guards who accompanied Nobert actually expected Layla to accept Eratos' proposal because they saw no reason why she would reject it. They became speechless when they saw the pure anger and killing intent in her eyes. Chapter 878, True Form of the Angels. Vina. Layla gave Eratos and her father 3 seconds to leave the place unharmed. Surprisingly, none of them took a step backward as they weren't going to leave the mountain. When Layla counted to 3 in her mind, Nerida shouted suddenly. Teacher, behind! Layla's instincts screamed at her as she leaped away from where she stood. A silver arrow with jade-green veins coiled around hit the ground. Layla landed comfortably on the ground and looked up at the mountain above the cave entrance to see a black-robed finger hanging on the mountain with a bow and arrow. When Layla thought Nobert couldn't stoop any lower, he surprised her. The assassin fired another arrow and another one at a rapid speed. Layla immediately raised her hand, casting a spell. Feathers of Angel. As soon as Layla cast the spell, pure white feathery wings materialized behind her and protected her from the arrows. Layla's speed caught Eratos off guard. In a blink of an eye, Layla ascended to the ground. In mid-air, a long vina appeared in her hand. When she struck a string, a powerful energy wave shot out from the vina, knocking down the assassin from the mountain. Before the assassin could hit the ground, Layla struck another chord which turned into a crescent moon-shaped blade and cut the core formation assassin in half. His body was cut into 2 halves as the assassin's entrails rained down through his hips along with blood. Nobert felt a chill running down his spine when he saw how easily Layla dealt with the assassin. Layla was completely pissed off by the ambush. Unfortunately, her anger blinded her mind and prevented her from realizing the assassin was just a distraction. When Layla landed on her feet, she couldn't find Eratos anymore. He just vanished into thin air until she felt a violent surge in energy around her. The mountain trembled as the arch energy surged to the sky and gathered above a golden glow. Get inside! Layla shouted at her disciples. She was too late to realize Eratos had finished casting a legendary spell. Although Eratos was a stage below Layla in terms of cultivation, a legendary spell would close the power gap between them. It was too late for her to stop the spell. The only thing she could do was move away from the spell's range. Meanwhile, Nobert and the guards behind him flew behind Eratos and watched Layla with arrogant looks on their faces. They deemed Layla deserved to be taught a lesson. Besides, Nobert had to resort to violence because of her. His world would turn into hell if he couldn't get Layla to marry Eratos. Before Nobert came to the Rainbow Islands, Nobert gambled with Eratos and lost the game in which he bet his daughter. He would have used Edith as a bet against Eratos, but the latter showed no interest in marrying a little girl. Eratos' love for Layla had turned into an obsession long before. So Eratos didn't suddenly snap as he always planned to take Layla by force if he couldn't get her to agree to marry her. Once Nobert finished casting the spell, a giant ethereal head of a dragon appeared behind Eratos. The dragon's head glowed in icy blue, and its roar shook the entire island. Layla thought of flying away, only to see the dragon's gaze fall on the cave entrance where her disciples stood there like statues in shock. Not that the three girls wanted to stay still and watch, but their bodies refused to move. The coldness permeating from the dragon petrified them due to their weak minds and bodies. Layla dashed at her disciples to shield them from the dragon. However, the moment she took a step toward the girls, the dragon opened its mouth, firing hundreds of ice spikes in a steady stream. Having no other choice, Layla summoned Angel's Vina. As soon as she summoned the Vina, everything around her stopped as though someone had pressed a pause button on the world. Slowly, with an otherworldly vibration, a pure white Vina with feathery wings attached to it appeared in the air before Layla. Each string glistened and whispered inside Layla's head to play them all. This was the true form of Angel's Vina. A sentient being that turned into a Vina by the gods and remained dormant until Layla touched it. Ever since she bonded with the Vina, it stayed with her, giving her supernatural abilities. Even after years of being with the Vina, Layla barely scratched the surface of its true powers. Once the Vina appeared before Layla, she gently struck a string, imagining a shield powerful enough to block the ice spikes. When she struck the string cut her finger and absorbed the blood. The strings glowed in red for a moment as Layla felt extremely tired. In its true form, the Angel's Vina consumed the user's life essence, aka the soul energy, to work. Hence, overusing the Vina would eventually lead the user to his or her death. It took great mental fortitude to resist using the Vina, and that was the main reason why Layla always stayed meditating inside her cave and seldom used the Vina in battles. Ding! The moment the string vibrated, a glowing dome appeared around Layla and the little girls. After the vibrating sound faded away, the Vina faded away. As a result, everything started to move once again. All the spikes shot out from the dragon's mouth and hit the dome, creating countless ripples in the dome, but none of them could pierce through it. The dragon roared louder and louder as the number of ice spikes increased rapidly, except the result remained the same. After a brief moment, the dragon finally vanished into thin air, leaving everyone speechless, especially Eratos. He couldn't believe his almighty legendary spell couldn't even scratch Layla, let alone knock her out. Once the dragon and the dome disappeared, Layla felt the immense toll the Vina took on her body and soul. She could barely stand still. "Teacher," Layla heard Johanna's voice as she turned around. "Megan," Layla's heart skipped a beat, seeing Megan's robes slowly turning red around her chest. The little girl had a hole in her chest. Megan's body froze from head to toe before her eyes, and Layla couldn't do anything. Unfortunately, the dragon's spike penetrated Megan just a second before the dome appeared around them. Considering Megan was just at the body refining stage, the spike went through her chest, leaving the dragon's ice essence. It completely froze Megan from the inside out. No, no, no. Layla shivered as she immediately took out a healing potion to heal Megan. Her eyes teared up as Layla tried to pour the potion into Megan's mouth. However, the little girl had already turned into an ice statue, and when the potion hit her mouth, Megan's body shattered into pieces. Everything around Layla froze. Layla's mind went completely blank as she stared at the icy shards slowly melting on the ground. As much as Nobert wanted the street urchin dead, he couldn't feel any joy. Instead, he realized they screwed up big time. Fear quickly clenched everyone's heart, and Eratos felt a chill running down his spine when he saw the vengeful eyes of Layla, which had no sentience but pure murderous lust. Without giving any time for Eratos to react, Layla summoned the Angel's Vina yet again. She knew using it twice in a day would put her cultivation speed several years behind, yet she couldn't care less. At that moment, she wanted Eratos dead more than anything in the world. This time, the Vina appeared without passing everything around it. Hence, everyone could clearly see the mass-destructive weapon. Layla struck the string, imagining Eratos dead. Just like before, her hands bled as she finally couldn't stand still anymore. After the Vina absorbed the blood, a powerful sonic wave shot straight toward Eratos. His instincts kicked in, making him quickly raise his hands to defend himself. but the invisible sonic wave broke his right hand to pieces. Eratos roared in agony as Nobert saw the young's body shrivel with blood oozing out of his shoulder where his hand was a moment ago. The young man's stunning handsome face lost all its glow and shine and turned into something hideous. All his hair crumbled down from his head as his body shrunk to the point he looked like he hadn't eaten for a year. However, the sound of his screams still reverberated through the islands with full of vigor. Nobert trembled hearing the scream. "Kill me!" Eratos roared, wishing for a quick death. As much as he wanted the pain to stop and embrace sweet death, the shark head medallion on his chest prevented death from taking Eratos' life. In her fury, Layla didn't notice the glowing medallion. Hence, when she saw Eraps fall down from the sky, she thought he had lost his life. After Eratos dropped from the air, she turned her gaze at Nobert and his guards. "You and I are done," Layla's murderous gaze swept across Nobert. "Go away before I break my promise to my mother," Layla growled. Nobert didn't dare to stay any longer as he could tell the murderous intent in her eyes was no joke. Nobert left the island without turning back. While flying away from the island, he heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. Since he thought Layla killed him, he thought the bet he had with Eratos was no longer valid. Unfortunately, Nobert found out the hard way that Eratos was rescued by the sea folks, and Eratos' family retaliated on the Aldens, slaughtering the strongest warriors in their house. Layla had to step in and save the rest with the Empress' help. After reducing them, Layla sent Edith and her mother to Thusia, where Edith befriended Victoria Barnes. Although Layla saved Edith and her mother, Edith blamed Layla for what had happened to Nobert and the Aldens. On that day, when Megan died in her arms, Layla thought she had avenged her by killing Eratos. Layla never thought she would meet Eratos almost after 18 years in the Fire Realm. Chapter 879, Saving Layla Alden, Current Day. In a faraway land outside Hell City, Layla was on the ground, coughing up blood. Her sky-blue robes were stained with red sand and her own blood. She coughed up, mouth full of blood as her face looked pale. "You are coming with me dead or alive, bitch." Layla heard the thunderous roar of Eratos, whom Layla never thought would be alive. He hovered in the air with his eyes glowing in rage and vengeance. Layla barely recognized him when she first saw him. Almost 20 years ago, Eratos was a rising star who ruled the hearts of young maidens in Aur. He had striking golden hair, perfectly chiseled muscles, and square jaws. But after Layla used Angel's Vina, his appearance changed drastically. For instance, he had no wavy golden hair but a few strands. His body looked shriveled, as though he hadn't eaten for months. The eyes that glowed with vigor turned into eyes filled with vengeance. Out of all changes, the wooden hand drew the most attention. The Angel's Vina destroyed his hands when he killed Megan, Layla's disciple. Eratos got his hand replaced with a wooden hand, engraved with several runes. This wooden hand and his appearance were a constant reminder of what had happened to him. Usually, a healing potion and some powerful alchemy substances could heal almost any injuries. Unfortunately, none of them could turn Eratos back to the way he was before he went to the Rainbow Islands. All these years, Eratos was training and waiting to have his revenge. Thanks to the sea folks, he was able to beat Layla to the half-immortal stage. Gruazel orchestrated the events behind the scenes and brought Layla to the Fre realm. She had no idea Eratos was waiting for her in the Fire realm. Once Eratos saw her, he lost all his sanity and attacked her like a maniac. Since Layla was still at the fusion stage, she couldn't gain the upper hand against him. Hje overwhelmed Layla and almost beat her to a pulp. "Get up." Eratos taunted her to get back to her feet. As much as Layla tried to fight back, she couldn't even move a muscle. Her shoulder and right leg were crooked, with bones sticking through her skin. In addition, her beautiful face was swollen to the point even the closest of Layla wouldn't recognize her easily. If Eratos wanted to kill her, he could have done it so easily. However, he was ordered not to kill her. Not that Eratos intended to end her life so quickly. Instead, he wanted to make her suffer and pay for everything she did to him. For 18 years, he had to wake up in the morning and see his disfigured body in the mirror. Not a single day passed without Eratos wishing that Layla had killed him that day. "No one would have suffered the way you are about to," Eratos said, gritting his teeth. Except for the canines, all his teeth were nowhere to be found in his mouth. Thus, he looked horrible when he laughed at Layla's state. Even a grown man would be scared to death by Eratos' appearance. Although the shark head medallion saved Eratos all those years ago, it actually made his life a living hell. Grizzle and his kind fanned Eratos' hatred ever since and turned him into a vile monster. Eratos were their secret weapon against their enemies. Whenever Grizzle wanted someone to be taken care of, Eratos would be his first choice. Everyone who died in Eratos' hands went through hell and wished for a quick death. He was brutal, inhumane, and insane. Even many in Grizzle's close circle were terrified of Eratos and advised Grizzle to put him down like a rabid dog. However, Grizzle saw a greater potential of a killing machine than anyone else. As Eratos was taunting Layla, thunderclouds rumbled in the distance. Soon, clusters of dark clouds appeared above them. In his rage mode, Eratos didn't mind the sudden change in his surroundings. As far as he was concerned, it was just a typical storm in the fire realm. Considering Eratos spent his time secluded from the outer world in the sea folk realm, he had no idea what was happening in the world. When Layla saw the sky getting darker and darker, she knew he was there. Eratos' evil grin froze once he noticed the strange smile on Layla's face. He couldn't think of a single reason for what could have made her smile unless she went insane. "I will wipe that pretty smile off your face, bitch," Eratos snickered. A silver chain riddled with nails materialized in Eratos' hand. He clenched the chain tight and swung it toward Layla. Layla's instincts screamed at her to raise her hands to defend herself. But her hands simply refused to move. Thus, she could only close his eyes. A few seconds passed, yet the chain was nowhere close to Layla. Eratos tried to yank the chain without turning around. To his surprise, the chains didn't even move an inch as it felt like the chain was frozen in the air. Finally, Eratos slowly turned around to see someone dressed in complete black holding the chain in his one hand. "Ghost," Layla mumbled as she saw the Dark Lord hovering in the air facing Eratos. The last time she saw him, he was only a half-immortal. And a year later, he became an immortal on the verge of breaking through to the half-celestial stage. She would be lying if he said she wasn't glad to see him, especially given her situation. Facing Michael, Eratos tried to yank the chains out of his hands. But no matter how hard he tried, the chains didn't even move an inch. Eratos felt an overwhelming power radiating from the black-robed youngster, and when he focused, he was stunned to see his superior cultivation stage. The evil grin on Eratos' face completely vanished into thin air. In its stead, a shocked expression appeared on his face. Granted, Eratos lost all his reasoning and sanity when it came to Layla, but still, he was able to see the power gap between a half-immortal and an immortal. Suddenly, everything around Eratos turned completely black. Not a shred of light peeked through the darkness that enveloped him. This darkness around him felt vicious and eerie. The youngster completely vanished into the darkness except for his glowing red eyes. Before Eratos could finish his words, he was pulled toward the youngster by the chains. The next moment, he felt a strong grip around his throat. His face quickly turned purple without the lack of oxygen to his head. Eratos punched the youngster with all his might, only to feel like punching a stone wall. His hands went numb, and some of the fingers cracked instantly. Eratos gritted his teeth in pain without shouting. While Eratos struggled to escape Michael's grip, Gaia landed beside Layla with a healing potion. She quickly opened the vial and emptied the potion into Layla's mouth. The bruises and wounds on Layla's body rapidly disappeared as the rosiness returned to her skin. Layla's blurry vision slowly cleared up and showed Gaia's face. "Who the hell is that guy?" Gaia questioned Layla the moment she opened her eyes. With Gaia's help, Layla slowly got back to her feet. Instead of answering Gaia's question, she stared at the pitch-black darkness in the sky. She was unable to locate both Ghost and Eratos in the darkness. Inside the death range, Michael grabbed Eratos' wooden arm, twisted it to the point it cracked, and ripped it apart from his shoulder. Not again. Eratos roared. His painful scream echoed through the fire realm. Layla knew Eratos was a child in terms of cruelty compared to the Dark Lord. The latter obliterated an entire island of Ithilien and wiped off King Maxim's bloodline from the face of this world. The people of Ithilien still suffered the war's effects and wished things were different every single day. After Gaia heard the scream, she noticed a wooden arm stained with blood falling down from the sky. That bitch must die. Even when Eratos was on the verge of dying, his hatred toward Layla prevented him from begging for mercy. His words poured oil into Michael's flames of anger and made him crush Eratos' vocal cords. Michael then coiled the chains around Eratos' bleeding neck and squeezed the life out of him. As the light of life was fading away from Eratos' eyes, Michael unsheathed his dark sword and stabbed him in the gut. On the one hand, Michael squeezed Eratos' neck with the chains. On the other hand, he moved the dark sword upward, splitting Eratos' chest in half. Layla and Gaia stood on the ground, looking at the blood and entrails falling from the sky above them. They heard a sickening growl coming from the darkness, and judging by the amount of blood and organs falling down, they could imagine what was happening inside. There goes my chance of questioning him. I hope you will have some answers for us, Gaia sighed. If choking and cutting Eratos was not enough, Michael fired the dark beams out of his eyes and burned 2 holes through Eratos' head. While brutally murdering Eratos, he noticed the glowing shark head medallion on Eratos' neck. Michael felt the medallion's energy trying to keep Eratos' soul from leaving his body. This medallion saved Eratos from the wrath of angels Vina and kept him alive all these years. But Michael's power was far stronger than the magic within the medallion. He just grabbed it and pulled it from his neck against the medallion's resistance. Once Michael removed the medallion, it trembled violently for a moment in his hands before losing all its glow. When the dark sword reached the base of Eratos' neck, Michael twisted the sword and cut his head clean off his shoulders. Eratos' headless body fell down, swaying in the stormy wind. The dark beams melted down Eratos' head until nothing but a crumbling skull was left in his hand. Gradually, the darkness in the sky slowly faded away, revealing Michael in the air. Then, Michael slowly descended to the ground and landed before Layla. He didn't say a word to Layla but looked her in the eyes, expecting an explanation. Chapter 880, New Skill, The Soul Stare, What is he doing? Layla asked Gaia, hovering in the air where he killed Eratos an hour ago. After Michael ended Eratos' life, Layla told Michael and Gaia everything she knew about Eratos, from when she first met him and the last time he killed Megan. Finally, Michael learned why Layla lived in seclusion on her own island instead of with Edith. When Gaia asked why she was in the Fire Realm, Layla said she entered the Fire Realm to help a child born in Hell City named Megan. All those who knew Megan was dead except Nerida and Johanna. Thus when Layla heard a girl named Megan needed healing, she couldn't ignore the plea. Since Layla blamed herself for Megan's death, she immediately ventured into the Fire Realm, only to realize it was an ambush set up by Eratos. Gaia and Layla watched Michael's back as he hovered in the air without uttering a word. They thought Michael had calmed down after killing Eratos. In reality, he was preparing to slaughter all those people who sent Eratos after Layla. Like it or not, Layla was the mother of Harry, the spirit child. He may haven't agreed to be Harry's father, but Michael promised himself that he would protect the mother and son. Deep down, Michael had a bad feeling that Layla was just a distraction and the real target of this drama was Harry. Without Layla to protect Harry in the Rainbow Islands, he was defenseless. Michael didn't trust the Guardians were capable of protecting the spirit child if someone like Eratos decided to take him away. To confirm his suspicion, Michael ordered Azazel to go to the Rainbow Island and ensure the child was safe. Meanwhile, Michael prepared himself to face the bastard who dared to touch Layla. The moment Michael summoned the system, he settled his debt to the system, and even after paying the system, he had 300,000 badass points left. He willed the system to show his status as the long box containing everything related to him appeared in icy blue letters before his eyes. Host, Michael cultivation level, Immortal level 10 experience points, 8,000,000,000,000,000,000, 9 million experience points yet to be consumed, badass points, 300,000 skills and spells, Wind Blast, LVL 6 Ultimate Form Level 1 Eyes of Doom, LVL 5 Ultimate Form Level 1 Responsive Shield, LVL 8 Environment Scanning, LVL 8 Ignitia, LVL 8 Ultimate Form Level 1 Silenes, LVL 1 Meteor, LVL 1 Lightning Dash, LVL 6 Ultimate Form Level 1 Energy Devour, LVL 5 Soul Eater, LVL 5 Death Range, LVL 3 Eyes of Darkness. Normal, can sense the cultivation level of others / Eyes of Darkness, Lucifer, can sense the cultivation level of others, can see through illusions / Cloud of Darkness, Lucifer, weak-willed enemies will lose their courage completely and surrender, death range will be 50% more powerful, and if activated in darkness, the host's cultivation level will be boosted 4 levels up regardless of the stage barrier. Wordless Spellcaster, Lucifer, in full Lucifer form, the host just has to think of the spell to cast it. Techniques: Swords of Destiny, 98% Mastery Ring of Fire, 96% Mastery Serpent Maga, 98% Mastery Occupation, the Guardian of Sunrise Sect Lord Lucifer of the Abyssal the Dark Lord status, Healthy Goals, Control the World Grow the Order of Death Utility Function, Banker, LVL 5, Ratio, 1000 Gold Coins, 40 Badass Points, Runic Teleportation X-Ray Vision, also integrated with Eyes of Darkness, Wealth, 1 million gold special trait, 6-star Alchemist 5-star Blacksmith 5-star Inventor Subordinates, Gaia, Warrior. Loyalty level 100%, Raylene, 5-star Chef, loyalty level 99%, Arya, Assassin, loyalty level 86%, Maxine, Warrior, loyalty level 98%, Tiberius, Warrior, loyalty level 85%, Sadie, loyalty level 75%, Ricky, loyalty level 95%, Titus, loyalty level 84%, Optimus, loyalty level 83%, The Silent Reaper Crew, Pirates, loyalty level 92%, Base of Operation, The Abyssal the Crypt the Dark Ocean Familiars, Nightmare, Royal Dragon, Vidora, Three-Headed Hydra, Elemental Manipulation, Wind, 41% Mastery, Fire, 42% Mastery, Lightning, 51% Mastery, Darkness, 46% Mastery. A long brief moment later, Michael decided to open the legendary gift box he had received by killing the half-celestial shadow monster. When he willed the system to open the gift box, a golden box wrapped in red ribbons appeared before his eyes, trembled for a moment, and popped open, revealing a card shrouded in darkness. Congratulations! The host has received level 4 Soul Stare skill. Please be aware that the Soul Stare skill you can buy from the system for 300,000 badass points is nowhere near powerful as the one you just received. Michael felt the familiar acute pain in his head that appeared every time he bought a new spell or learned a specialization. The pain lasted for a few seconds before fading away. Once the pain was gone, Michael focused on the new spell and unveiled its powers. At the current level, the host can cause and induce the same pain the victim has caused to others in his lifetime. The host has a 30% chance to bring down the victim's cultivation by 1 stage if the skill was used on the victim for more than 10 seconds. The higher the skill level is, the higher the chance of bringing down the victim's cultivation stage. The Soul Stare's ultimate form would enable the host to control the victim by looking into their eyes from afar, like hypnotism? Michael asked the system. At its very core, yes. But the Soul Stare is much more powerful and complex than hypnotism. Once the host upgrades it to higher levels and unlocks the ultimate form, you can turn your enemies against their allies without even lifting a finger. Just hearing the system describe the skill's power made Michael momentarily forget about Eratos and the hit on Layla and feel the excitement coursing through his veins. However, he knew a godly power like this would come up with a catch. When he thought about it, the system informed Michael about the limitations of the skill. The Soul Stare cannot mind control adversaries who possess powerful souls. The victim must have nothing to protect their eyes. For instance, if the victim was to wear glasses, the Soul Stare would not work. This can be overridden by completing certain tasks the system assigns the host. What kind of tasks? Asked Michael. That is for another time, host. The system did not reveal anything about the tasks to Michael. He remembered the system telling him he had to complete some special tasks to upgrade the spells and skills after a certain level. For now, he didn't have to worry about these tasks. Besides, Michael lacked the points to upgrade his skills and spells to that level. Now that Michael had earned another new skill, he exited the system. Then, he immediately contacted Azazel through the earpiece, hoping Azazel would tell him that the spirit child was fine with Nerida and Johanna. "My lord," Azazel answered Michael's call. The moment Michael heard Azazel's voice filled with rage and shock, Michael's heart skipped a beat. "The spirit child is not here, my lord." "I am sorry," said Azazel. "Where are Nerida and Johanna?" Michael asked Azazel. "Knocked out, my lord." "Whoever took the child knocked them out before they could see his face," said Azazel. Michael had to take a few deep breaths to calm himself and never let the anger blind him. After being silent for a few moments, Michael asked Azazel about the guardians. "What about the guardians?" "The same, my lord. They were knocked out the same way as the disciples of Lady Layla." After hearing that whoever took Harry was knocked out instead of killed, Michael was able to heave a sigh of relief. "I don't see any signs of a struggle here, my lord." "What would you want me to do, my lord?" "Kill those guardians and inform Noah that his people failed their duty," Michael coldly ordered Azazel. It didn't even take a few seconds for Michael to come up with this brutal order. As far as Michael was concerned, they deserved to be killed. It was their duty to protect the spirit child, and they utterly failed in their duty. If Michael was there, their deaths would have been much more painful. "As you wish, my lord. I will do everything I can to find the spirit child. Now I have to break this news to Layla." "I will meet you later in the castle, Azazel," Michael sighed, cutting the connection between them. Although Michael partly blamed Layla for the spirit child's disappearance, he also blamed himself. He felt stupid for listening to Layla and promising her he would no longer spy on them. When Michael finally turned around, Gaia immediately saw something was wrong by looking at the grim look on his face. He slowly floated toward Layla and took a deep breath. "Layla. Someone has taken Harry." Those words hit Layla like a heavy hammer and made her mind go blank. She trembled from head to toe, unable to believe what she had just heard. Even Gaia was stunned by Michael, but she threw him an "I told you so" look. She nagged Michael to break his promise and continue to monitor the spirit child. However, Michael wanted them to have a normal life, completely cut off from him. Unfortunately, Michael learned his lesson the hard way. But Michael couldn't find a single person related to him who might want to take the spirit child. It felt like whoever took the child had nothing to do with him but with Layla. "I have to go." Layla tried to fly away, only to get stopped by Michael. He grabbed her by the arm. "There is nothing for you to do there. Harry is gone. Help me find whoever took him so I can bring him back safely." "You've done enough, Ghost," Layla answered Michael with gritted teeth. "Don't put the blame on him, Layla. He wasn't the one who made him get rid of all the safety measures in the first place." Gaia immediately came to Michael's defense as tears rolled out of Layla's eyes. She tried wriggling her hands out of Michael's grab, but he was too strong. "I don't think my enemies took him away, Layla. Whoever took him is related to you," said Michael. Finally, Layla stopped resisting Michael in complete shock. "It's not a coincidence that you were attacked, and Harry disappeared at the same time. Someone planned this. I am bringing him back with or without your help. And this time, I am doing this my way." Thunder rumbled in the distance while clusters of dark clouds appeared above them as a warning to whoever dared to kidnap Harry. They just made the last mistake of their life and ended up at the top of Michael's kill list. Chapter 881, Backup has arrived. "I can't think of anyone who might want to hurt Harry. No one even knows he exists except for you two and Noah," Layla mumbled. "And Edith," said Michael. The last time Michael saw Edith was at Ithalan before he slaughtered Victoria and her family. After that, Eddie practically disappeared from Michael's radar. He always thought she was with Noah or Layla. But judging by the bewildered look on Eddie's face, it was apparent Layla had no idea about Edith's location. "Where is she?" asked Gaia. I don't know. Why are we even talking about Edith? It must be someone who sent Eratos after me. We should have questioned him, Layla panicked. Her usually calm and cold demeanor completely disappeared when her child was in danger. At that moment, Layla was not the wielder of Angel's Vina but a mother who lost her child. Well, I am good at interrogating. But even I cannot make the dead speak, Gaia sighed. This might help us figure out who sent him. Michael opened his arm and showed them the shark head medallion. It contains a powerful rune that saved him from your Vina all those years ago. If we could find its origin, we have a chance to locate Harry. What if they did something to him? Layla trembled as Michael slowly shook his head. Whoever took Harry is not a killer. Otherwise, they would have killed your useless disciples and the guardians instead of knocking them out, said Michael. When Gaia heard that someone had knocked out Layla's disciples again, she couldn't help rolling her eyes. What are you teaching those girls? How many times did they get knocked out by now? For fuck's sake, teach those girls to fight. You can't kill people playing music. My dogs would do a better job than those useless bitches. Gaia wasn't just ridiculing them but was seriously pissed at Layla's disciples. I am not training them to be killers, Gaia. Layla creased her brows. Gaia was about to reply to Layla with a snarky comment when Michael raised his hand, ending their conversation. A few seconds later, Gaia flicked her wrist as the long bow materialized in her hand. Since Layla lacked the perception of Gaia and Michael, who were far stronger than Layla, it took her some time to sense a group of powerful entities flying toward them. Michael focused on the horizon to see a group led by an immortal flying toward them. Other than the immortal, the group had 4 more half-immortals. Simply put, this group could decimate several kingdoms in Elan and Azair within a few hours. Looking at the group, one thing became certain to Michael: Eratos had a pretty powerful backing behind him. I will take care of them. Michael moved in front of Layla and Gaia. I can take 1 or 2, said Gaia, but Michael shook his head. Keep her safe. Michael looked at Layla over his shoulder and ordered Gaia. Once the group came close enough to see Michael, he drew his dark swords and cracked his neck. The sky above him rumbled as lightning streaks struck across the dark sky like dark spider webs on a black canvas. Then, the clusters of dark clouds obliged, letting heavy rain descend in little gleaming drops of silver. It added an alien glamour to the eerie red world of the fire realm. A huffing wind rose up then, stirring the red sand on the ground. A tinkling sound came to their ears as the first pearls of rain dropped onto their heads. The sound was like the glassy clinking of a champagne flute, lilting and clear. A sheet of rain passed over them as the sound intensified. The smell of rain in the fire realm rose like a miasma. Let's go, Gaia said to Layla. Although Layla was reluctant to leave, she ultimately followed behind Gaia because she knew she wasn't strong enough to face them. Meanwhile, the sky grew darker and more vengeful as though it had a score to settle with the fire realm. Steaming shrouds of cloud coil and writhe as the unearthly caterwauling sound filled the air. The wind whipped everything into a frenzy. The dark clouds raced across the sky, thrumming with the charged energy they were desperate to release. Then there was an explosion like a sonic boom that shook the entire realm. Doom-black clouds, filled with malice, churned and roiled to the rhythm of the wind. Branched lightning lit up the dark sky, following the rumbling thunder. Buzzing and hissing, several lightning bolts struck across the fire realm, turning some poor trees into charcoal within a second. Under the raging storm, Michael hovered in the sky alone, waiting to welcome the group of immortals. Finally, the man who led the group, an elf, halted in the sky and signaled his lackeys to wait for his orders wordlessly. The elf scanned Michael from top to bottom until he realized who they were against. To Michael's surprise, the others behind the elf had no signs of fear or shock in their eyes. They seemed like humans, but something about them irked Michael in the wrong way. Are you looking for Eratos? Michael asked the group. His voice became demonic as the cloud of darkness slowly shrouded Michael. Michael controlled the death range around him. The group wasn't enveloped by complete darkness. Instead, they had just enough light to see Michael's figure barely. The elf was at immortal stage level 5. Still, the elf had no fear in his eyes. Even after seeing the darkness surrounding him and hearing the terrifying voice of the Dark Lord, the elf remained calm. "I am afraid he is no longer here," said Michael after the elf and his group remained silent. "This does not concern you, Dark Lord. You are meddling in things you cannot possibly fathom," the elf snarled. "Let us take the human with us, and we can forgive you for killing Eratos," said the elf, only to see Michael burst into laughter. "Forgive me? Ha ha ha!" Michael's laughter echoed through the dark skies. After Michael's laughter faded away, his eyes turned completely black and lit up with dark flames. "Riddle me this, where do you intend to take her?" Michael asked the elf. "It doesn't concern you, Dark Lord. Why don't you go play villain, where you came from, and let the grown-ups deal with this?" the elf snickered. Despite facing the Dark Lord, he looked just as arrogant as facing a typical cultivator. In Michael's eyes, the elf seemed really stupid. But again, he had a feeling the reason for the elf's haughtiness might be some legendary spells in his arsenal. The poor elf had no idea Michael could raise his power to half-celestial stage in a blink of an eye. "I don't enjoy killing, but it would be hard not to when I am killing you," Michael calmly said. "You narrow-minded fool. You only think about killing, not the consequences. Consequences of killing immortals. Kill me, and 5 others will take my place. We are legion, and no one can stop us," the elf growled at Michael. "Watch me," said Michael as the crimson-red lightning bolts dancing around the dark swords intensified. They crackled violently as though they were desperate to take the elf and his group's life. The half-immortals standing behind the elf suddenly raised their hands as several lightning bolts from the sky above struck Michael simultaneously. Even from far away, Gaia and Layla could feel the electricity in the air and their hair standing up. Without giving Michael a time to retaliate, they bombarded him with lightning bolts. While the half-immortals were striking him with lightning bolts, the elf clapped, sending a powerful sonic wave in Michael's direction. The sonic wave pushed away the darkness around Michael for a moment, revealing him being struck down by the bolts of lightning. To Gaia's surprise, the ground beneath her cracked open after the elf clapped his hands together. Soon, more cracks branched out from the big crack and formed a web of cracks in the ground. She and Layla had to fly away and look for stable ground. Luckily for Hell City residents, the battle between them happened far away. Otherwise, several buildings would have collapsed and taken many lives. When the elf thought about casting another spell, everything around him turned pitch black. He couldn't even see his own hands before his eyes. Once the darkness blinded them completely, the elf felt a chill running down his spine. His instincts screamed at him to move away, and so he did. The moment he dashed to the right, he felt a strong breeze of wind across his face. He was unable to see what was happening around him, except he heard one of his lackeys groan in pain for a quick second. The elf immediately cast a spell to summon a bright sword that lit up inside the darkness and revealed a headless body hovering in the air beside him. Blood streamed out of his neck, adding red to the rain. As the elf was staring at the headless body, a strong wave of wind flew past him, snuffing out the light. "Hide as much as you want, coward," the elf started to growl. "I am going to show you the true meaning of power," said the elf. Then, the elf flew out of the darkness and prepared to cast a powerful spell. He closed his eyes for a moment as a golden shield around him appeared to protect him while he cast the spell. From the ground, Gaia sensed the sudden surge in energy around her. In a blink of an eye, an ethereal cage appeared right above the dome of darkness. Thick chains glistening in the light grew out of the cage and shot straight into the darkness. "Got you," the elf snickered as the darkness enveloping his lackeys faded away, revealing the Dark Lord and 2 other headless bodies. The golden chains coiled around Michael like sentient beings. They squeezed him, restricting his movements. The elf couldn't care less about the death of 3 of his lackeys. He forgot about everything when he saw the chains coiling around the Dark Lord. Layla's heart skipped a beat as she tried to ascend into the air. But Gaia simply stopped her and shook her head. "Let the elf be happy for a moment," Gaia smirked. Chapter 882, What Should I Do? The elf raised his hands, clenching his fist as the chains coiling around Michael tightened. Since Michael still hadn't cast the death range, he remained at the immortal stage. He wanted the elf to think he had the upper hand for a moment. Looking at the chains tightening around his body, the elf grinned arrogantly. The ethereal cage slowly floated above Michael to cage him within. Finish him, the elf ordered the two half-immortals who survived Michael's attack. They didn't need the elf to order them twice as they cast lightning spells to weaken him. In a blink of an eye, several lightning bolts struck Michael from above. But the responsive shield appeared around Michael, absorbing most of the lightning energy. Nonetheless, the half-immortals continued to bombard Michael with lightning bolts. Countless lightning bolts struck Michael in the sky, causing Layla's heart to ache. It's my turn, the elf creased his brows when he saw the Dark Lord smiling. He remained unharmed except for a single drop of blood trickling from his lips. Hearing the Dark Lord's words, the elf willed the cage to drop on him, caging him within. However, the moment the golden cage trembled, the Dark Lord grabbed the chains and started to twist them with his hands. The chains let out a shrieking noise as the elf noticed cracks appearing in the chain. Suddenly, everything around them turned pitch black as before. The golden cage glimmered in the darkness for a few moments before getting shrouded by the darkness. Stuck inside the darkness, the elf and his lackeys tried to escape the domain of the death range. When they finally managed to fly through the darkness, they heard a thundering shatter in the air. They turned around and looked at the darkness slowly fading away. Once the darkness completely disappeared, they witnessed countless specks of light spots around the Dark Lord. The cage and chains the elf used to trap Michael were nowhere to be seen. Instead, they saw the Dark Lord devilishly smiling at them. Playtime is over, Michael's demonic voice swept through the area. After they heard his words, the cloud of darkness around him darkened. To their complete shock, the power level increased with the darkness until the elf sensed the power radiation of a half-celestial. The elf couldn't believe it. If the Dark Lord was an immortal, he still had some spells that could take him down. But no spell in his arsenal had the power to take down a half-celestial. Only then did the elf realize that he pretended to be weak to make them cast all their spells and exhaust their energies. Now that the half-immortals spend almost half of their energy casting lightning spells, and he spent a chunk of his energy casting a legendary spell, the Dark Lord gained the upper hand in the battle. Without giving them any time to retaliate, the Dark Lord fired dark beams out of his eyes and burned 2 holes through one of the half-immortals' chest. Blood splattered out from his chest as he groaned in pain. Before anyone could react, the Dark Lord vanished into thin air and appeared right behind the groaning half-immortal. Pulch! The elf felt a splash of hot blood on his face. He turned around to see the head of his minion flying in the air. While the head was still in the air, a ring of dark flames shot out of the Dark Lord, burning everyone within. The elf's silver robes were on fire in a blink of an eye. He felt the scorching heat burning through his porcelain skin. Fighting the pain, he managed to fly through the ring of fire and escape its range. However, the same couldn't be said for his lackeys. When he turned around, he only saw headless bodies burning to ashes before falling down from the sky. With all his lackeys dead, he was the last man standing against the Dark Lord. Despite facing an overwhelmingly powerful opponent, the elf managed to react in time and cast a spell. In a blink of an eye, crescent-shaped fire blades appeared out of nowhere and shot toward Michael. They flew in all directions to cut the enemy into pieces and burn the pieces to ashes. Facing the countless fire blades, Michael simply raised his hand, casting his own wind blades. The wind blades sniffed out the fire in the fire blades, voiding its effects. Some wind blades flew through the fire blades and hit the elf. The lucky bastard managed to cast a quick defense spell that formed a sparkling chakra in front of him and absorbed most of the wind blade's power. Suppose he hadn't cast the defense spell, the wind blades would have cut him in several places. Truth be told, Michael held back when casting the wind blades. His aim was not to kill the elf but to take him alive. The elf might have some answers about Harry's location. Even if the elf didn't know the exact location, if he could tell him where they intended to take Layla, he would be able to track down the one who ordered Harry's kidnapping. Boom! After surviving the wind blades, the elf clapped his hands together. This time, he created several sonic waves to disorient Michael and attack him with another spell. The sonic waves overshadow the thunderclaps and split the ground beneath them. Fortunately, Layla and Gaia were standing on barren lands without any buildings or living beings. Countless cracks spread through the land like spider webs as they flew away from the ground before falling into the holes. In the air, Michael heard his ears ringing due to the sonic waves. In case his power level didn't reach the half-celestial stage, his eardrums would have exploded. He was certain of it. The sonic waves disturbed the cloud of darkness, revealing Michael's body to the elf. For a moment, Michael's power level dropped from half-celestial stage level 4 to level 3. When the elf sensed the drop in his power radiation, he dashed at the Dark Lord to take advantage of the situation. On the midway, a trident made of emerald stone materialized in the elf's hands. He clenched the trident tight and stabbed Michael. But when the trident was a few inches away from his chest, the Dark Lord's figure disappeared from his sight. The elf felt a chill as his instincts screamed at him to turn around. As he was about to turn around, he felt a sharp pain in his back. He looked down to see a sword sticking through his gut. Blood trickles down from the tip of the black sword. He tried to move, yet his body refused. Grgh, the elf growled as he tried to push the sword back, only to feel a sharp sting in his neck. He slowly turned to the side and saw the Dark Lord injecting something into his neck. Layla witnessed the battle with awe and shock. This was the first time she had seen two immortals go head-to-head. And the effects of the battle were devastating to the land around them. When she looked around, the barren land had countless cracks, craters, and bodies. If they battled above a city or a town, it would have turned into a ruin by the end of their battle. Once the injection of paralyzing poison was empty, Michael drew the needle out of the elf's neck. "What did you do?" The elf could barely move his lips and questioned the Dark Lord. Michael grabbed the elf by his neck, descended from the sky, and landed beside Gaia and Layla. "It is not safe for you here," Michael told Layla. "I am not moving without any information about Harry," Layla shook her head. "And we will get it when we interrogate the elf." "We cannot do that here," Michael's voice turned grave. Layla clenched her fist, thinking about leaving the fire realm. Eventually, she agreed to leave the place and follow Michael. After Layla nodded, Michael willed the system to teleport them all to the castle, where they had everything to break down the elf. Layla closed her eyes when she felt the space around her distort, and by the time she opened her eyes, she was standing in a brightly lit hall with a large round stone table in the center. Seeing Gaia walking away with the elf, Layla tried to follow her behind. "You don't want to see it." "Trust me," Michael stopped Layla. "Give me 10 minutes with him, and I will be back with a lead on your son," Gaia reassured Layla before leaving the hall. Layla seemed reluctant but ultimately decided not to follow her behind. After Gaia left the room, she was alone with Ghost in the room. As one would expect, Layla's eyes were filled with concern and fear for her son's life. Poor Layla felt so helpless and weak to do anything. Her inner emotions slowly turned into anger. Michael noticed her eyes blazing with fury as he sat on his throne. Unlike Layla, Michael remained calm and didn't direct his anger toward her because he knew there was nothing Layla could have done. "Why does this keep happening to him?" "He is only a little child," Layla stuttered. "He is going to be harm's way no matter how far we live from you." "A son has to pay for his father's sins," Layla said, gritting her teeth. "So you are blaming me?" asked Michael. "We both know Harry will always end up in the middle of your war against the entire world. Tell me, what should I do?" Michael calmly asked Layla. "Should I drop everything and surrender myself to the Guardians? Or should I leave everything behind and live in the cold mountains? What should I do?" Michael slowly spoke these words. "I don't want to blame you. But it was you who prematurely absorbed the first energy. It was you who decided to give Harry a physical body. It was you who failed to kill Eratos. And who made me promise not to watch over Harry. It was you." In case you didn't know, I didn't wage war against any of them. They created the Dark Lord and vilified me so they could be heroes. Michael's cold words echoed through the hall. Layla was speechless as the entire hall grew darker and darker. Chapter 883, a clue about Harry's whereabouts. After bombarding Layla with questions, Michael just left the hall, leaving her alone. He simply didn't want to argue with a mother who was in pain of losing her child. He was on his way to the interrogation room when Azazel appeared before him. My lord. The items you asked the twins to acquire are here. Michael finally heard some good news as Azazel continued. I ordered the men to put everything in Alchemy Hall, my lord, said Azazel. As much as Michael liked to have separate halls for everything, the construction works had been halted due to a lack of funds until he received 200 million gold coins from King Porter Forbes as a price for lifting Chanel's curse. Luckily for Michael, the dwarves finished the Alchemy Hall. Thanks to the 200 million gold coins, Michael was able to buy everything he needed to get his new brew business up and running, as well as the construction materials needed for the Dark Castle. Once Michael paid the twins 50 million to buy everything he needed, he thought the rest could get the construction materials to continue the work for at least a month. However, the dwarves informed Gaia that the materials they bought could only last for a week. The Dark Castle had turned into a money pit, especially after Michael bought some blueprints from the system and ordered them to be built accordingly. Michael didn't even want to imagine how much the weapons, turrets, and special defense arrays from the system would cost him in gold coins. We shall go take a look. Michael changed his path and headed to Alchemy Hall, located next to Elidor's Hall, where they had the teleportation portal. The smell of fresh paint and luminescent orbs filled the air as Michael reached his newly built Alchemy Hall. Due to his recent activities, he had no time to stroll through the castle and enjoy the sight of his new home. Michael placed his hand on the black door as an emerald green chakra appeared between his hand and the door. The chakra glowed for a second before the door clicked open. As he entered the hall, a gigantic cauldron that occupied almost half the hall welcomed him. The towing cauldron stood at least 15 feet high and 20 feet wide or more. Surprisingly, Elidor was waiting for him in the hall. There you are. Elidor walked toward him with creased brows. I remember you told me you are going to grow everything you need in this hall. Explain it to me how you plan to knight Verdana with a giant burning cauldron beside it, asked Elidor. Then do you remember that I told you this before my plan to start the new brew business? Michael asked Elidor while walking toward his cauldron. But you are right, I cannot grow a plant with ink properties in a high-temperature hall. No one below the soul refining stage would survive in the hall after we put a fire under the cauldron. Michael agreed with Elidor that he wouldn't be able to grow everything he needed in this hall as he had planned before. Unfortunately, the circumstances forced Michael to change his plans. That's why I thought of something else, something I need your help with. Michael had been planning this for quite some time. To be exact, ever since he stepped into the abyssal in the dark forest. Until now, he didn't have any need to resort to his new plan. His words made Elidor curious. The elf loved challenges, and every task he received from the Dark Lord was nothing but a challenge. I want a pocket dimension connected to this alchemy hall, said Michael. The system required 2 million badass points to locate a hidden pocket dimension. According to the system, it could teleport the pocket dimension to the Dark Ocean. However, it required another 3 million badass points to anchor the dimension to the alchemy hall. That was where Elodie came into the picture. Since he was a 6-star runemaster, Michael could order him to perform the task instead of spending 3 million badass points. I assume you have the location of a pocket dimension, asked Elidor. At first, the Dark Lord's requests and tasks surprised him. But at this point, he grew accustomed to the Dark Lord and everything he did. Hence, when Michael asked Eldery to connect a pocket dimension to the hall, he wasn't surprised as he once would have been. I can bring the dimension here soon. Until then, we cannot grow any plants in this hall. The brewing must be prioritized, said Michael. While Elidor was processing Michael's request, he studied the intriguing runes and etchings in the cauldron. Whoever forged the cauldron engraved it with various runes and chakras to withstand intense heat. He doubted the cauldron could survive the dark flame's heat, but it would certainly survive the lava in Mount Hades. Luckily, Michael didn't have to bring in the lava to heat the cauldron. Instead, typical flames from burning firewood were enough to refine his new brew. There is no time like presence. After Michael circled around the cauldron, he turned his gaze toward Azazel. "Bring me all the firewood we have. I will start the brewing before I leave," said Michael. "Forgive me for questioning you, my lord. But where do you plan to go?" "We still have no clue about the spirit child," said Azazel. "I have a feeling we will have soon." Not even a minute had passed when Gaia entered the hall with blood all over her face. Blood trickled down all over the floor from her robes as she made her way toward Michael. "I have good news and bad news." "Which one do you want first?" asked Gaia. "Start with the bad news," said Michael. The elf didn't know anything except he received a task to kill Eratos and bring Layla to an empty place in the fire realm. "You know what it means." He and HEW minions were sent to clear out all the loose ends. "Whoever sent him wants to be in the shadows pretty bad," said Gaia. Deep down, Michael expected the elf to be clueless. He was all bark, not bite. As for why he acted pretty tough, because he was from Nelthaner, said Gaia. "Figures. So how is he doing now?" "His heart gave up when I pulled his last tooth out," Gaia simply shrugged. Michael sighed, thinking about his lost experience points because the elf died within the void line. But he had bigger things to worry about than experience points. "Azazel, go have an eye on Layla." "As you wish, my lord." Azazel walked out of the room, leaving Michael with Gaia and Elidor. "What's the good news then?" asked Elidor. "I found where this comes from." Gaia opened her palms and showed the shark head medallion Michael took from Eratos. It was drenched in blood, but Elodie could vaguely see the tiny complex web of runes engraved on it. These runes were so small that they required the special eyesight of a runemaster to see them. "When I saw this shark, I contacted Mutrad and asked him if he could recognize it, considering he came from the stinking sea, and he recognized it." Michael finished her words before she could brag about her instincts. "Yes." Gaia gently punched him in the shoulder for ruining her moment and nodded. "Now let me be clear. Mutrad didn't know exactly where Eratos got this medallion. But he was certain the medallion belonged to the sea folks. He outright admitted it came from his world." Michael tilted his head as Gaia rolled her eyes. "I may have threatened to burn down everyone he loves and give him a one-way ticket to hell," Gaia admitted of threatening Mutrad. Mutrad would have never admitted that the shark medallion hailed from his world. He was one of the few who witnessed the horror that transpired during the last days of the Ithilien War. No one could blame Mutrad for fearing and trying to stop the Dark Lord from doing the same to his world. Mutrad had quit trying to take down the Dark Lord a long time ago. Now, all he wanted was to keep his sea realm safe from the Dark Lord. That was the only reason he agreed to be the Dark Lord's spy in the first place. The Mutrad before Ithilien would certainly die of shame of the current Mutrad. "Let me go talk to them." Suddenly, Gaia and Michael heard the skirmish outside the door. "My lady, you cannot dash," he heard Azazel's voice followed by Layla. "Ghost, let her in," Michael said to Azazel as the door clicked open, revealing Layla and Azazel. "My lord, she is not listening to me," Azazel complained. Ignoring the demon butler, Layla rushed toward them. "What did he tell you?" Layla asked Gaia, completely overlooking the giant cauldron, the blood-drenched robes of Gaia, and the half-elf standing next to them. "We know where they might have taken Harry." Instead of Gaia, Michael answered Layla. "Where?" Layla almost shouted. "The realm of sea folks," Michael said. His eyes glistened with cold, killing intent. "What?" Layla was shocked. No matter how hard she thought, she couldn't find a single person who might have taken Harry to the sea folks. "I have on good authority that the shark medallion Eratos wore was forged in the sea realm," Michael said while Layla was speechless. "It can't be. Why would anyone want to take Harry to them? Who would take him there? The sea realm is not a place anyone can get in and out as they please. You need someone high in the sea folk world to bring an outside into their world." "Yes, we know," said Gaia. "Eratos was outside, and he somehow had what belonged to them," said Michael. Plus, whoever sent Eratos after you ordered the elf to take out Eratos and bring you to a secluded area, said Gaia. I know this doesn't make any sense to you. But this is the only lead we have. If someone has ever touched a single hair on his head, I will wipe them off the face of this world. Chapter 884, Leaving for the Realm of Sea Folks. No matter how much Michael and Gaia explained, Layla couldn't make sense of the situation. She knew the Dark Lord made no enemies in the Sea Folks, so she didn't think he was responsible for Harry's disappearance. Just the fact the shark-headed medallion came from the Sea Folk was not enough for her to accept Harry was taken into the Sea Realm. She still thought someone else had taken Harry. Since her son's life was in danger, she was not in the mood to waste even a second. I need to go to the Rainbow Islands. Layla shook her head and turned around to leave the dark ocean. Wait, Michael stopped her. She strolled toward her and waited for her to turn around. When Layla turned around, Michael stabbed her in the neck with an injection. Gaia and Ellider were completely caught off guard as they never thought Michael would resort to such action. Layla's whole body went rigid as Michael emptied the gray potion into her. What, bastard? Layla mumbled before she collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Geez. What was that? Gaia asked Michael. This will keep her unconscious for 2 weeks. If I don't return with Harry by then, inject her with more of this. Michael threw a space ring at Azazel. She is going to be pissed, said Gaia. When she wakes up, Harry will be by her side, said Michael. Unfortunately, he had to knock her out, as Michael would have loved to take her with him to the Sea Realm. However, when he realized she wasn't taking Harry's disappearance as well as she could have, he went with Plan B. I thought she would use her brain and not give up to her emotions, Michael sighed. Don't be an asshole, human. She is a mother who lost her child. Of course, she will be run by her emotions. If my kid was taken, I would have gone pure mad, Gaia said, lifting Layla from the ground in her arms. And what would have going mad done? Nothing. You cannot let your emotions blind you in situations like this, said Michael. I think you made the right choice. We can keep her safe while you look for the child, Ellider agreed with Michael's actions. I am not surprised. Guys don't understand what it is to be a mother. You never will, Gaia slowly shook her head, showing her disappointment in them. Just find Harry as quickly as you can, Gaia said before leaving the room. I hate to tell you, my lord. But are you sure you want to go to the Sea Realm just because Eratos had this medallion? Asked Ellider. If you are wrong then Noah would find Harry. Michael cut short Ellider's words with a surprising answer. Both Azazel and Ellider couldn't figure out Michael's complete plan. Seeing the bewildered looks on their faces, Michael took a deep breath and broke down his plan. Now that Azazel killed the Guardians, Noah would look into this matter and find someone has taken Harry. Keeping Harry was Noah's responsibility. When he realized he had failed, Noah would sweep the entire world to find him. While Noah is searching for Harry in the land, I will chase my lead in the Sea Realm. All it matters is finding Harry, Michael sighed. Although Noah was his mortal enemy, Michael had more than enough confidence in Noah that he would turn every stone to find Harry. Michael may be a god, but even he couldn't be in 2 places at the same time. Layla was too emotionally unstable, and he had other tasks for Gaia. Hence, Michael decided to use Noah to look for Harry on the land. After Michael explained his plans, silence fell over the hall. What comes after finding Harry, my lord? Rainbow Islands and Layla can't keep the child safe anymore, said Ellider, cutting through the silence. Mazeroth, Michael took a deep breath and said. As soon as Ellider heard the name, his heart skipped a beat. He almost thought the Dark Lord was playing with him. However, when he saw the serious look on his face, Ellider realized the Dark Lord wasn't kidding. Are you being serious right now? What could have possibly made you think of putting him in Mazeroth? Did you forget Mazeroth is Skyhall? Ellider almost shook Michael by his shoulder. Sometimes, the safest place to hide is right under our enemy's nose. Only Noah and Andreas know Harry is my son. I will make sure it stays that way. He and Layla will be safe in Mazroth until he becomes strong to protect himself and his mother. Azazel had never heard the Dark Lord talk so seriously. On the other hand, Elidar still thought it was a bad idea to put Harry in Mazroth. Even if they didn't know Harry was yours, what if their propaganda turns him against you? What if he grows strong enough to be a threat to you, a threat to all of us? You and I both know it will happen if you send him to Mazroth. Michael shook his head with a smug look on his face. No matter how strong he comes, I will always be stronger. And suppose he somehow turned out to be a puppet, I will explain my side of things to him. If he still felt like going against me, Gaia would take him down, and I won't stop her. Just by the look in his eyes, Elidar could tell he wasn't kidding about this either. Somehow, Michael's stand against Harry made Elodie calm down. What about Edith, my lord? Azazel, who remained silent until now, questioned Michael about Edith. Except for Noah and Andreas, Edith was the only one on the opposite side who knew Harry was Michael's spirit son. After what Michael had done to Victoria Barnes and her family, Azazel had no doubt that Edith would hate the Dark Lord to the core. Azazel dared not to underestimate a woman with a vengeance. As far as Azazel was concerned, Edith was a threat that had to be dealt with. Unfortunately, ever since the Dark Lord nuked Ithilien, Edith had gone missing. Yeah, she knows Harry is your son. If she told anyone about that in Emazaroth, just to get back at you, Harry and Layla would be crucified by the Sky Hall. At that time, you would be the one who sent them to their deaths. She wouldn't do that, Michael snickered. She is morally righteous, just like Noah. She won't throw her nephew in the fire to hurt me. No, she will do something else, something much more dramatic. Whatever it is, I can handle myself. I just hope for her sake, she stays away from me. A couple of hours passed since Michael knocked out Layla. Once his minions brought enough firewood and placed it under the cauldron, Michael lit them, starting the fire with a single bolt of lightning. Upon meeting the flames, the runes on the cauldron began to radiate a dim light. Michael ascended to the air and poured gallons of water into the cauldron, and waited for the water to boil. While Michael was busy refining the brew, Gaia sharpened his dark swords. She kept muttering something under her breath and didn't look at Michael at all. At first, Michael ignored her, but after a certain point, it felt like a bee hovering near his ear. You have to take care of things up here. Understand it, Snake, said Michael, throwing the luminescent mushrooms he plucked from the Idenese forest. Gaia didn't respond to him except she rubbed the sharpening stone on the dark sword with more force. You do know they don't need sharpening, right? Michael sighed. As a matter of fact, I don't, Gaia growled. Just like I don't know why you keep refusing to take me with you. We used to do everything and go everywhere together. Ever since you put a ring on my finger, I don't get to come with you anywhere. I am pissed, and I feel like I want to boil you in that cauldron. Hearing Gaia, Michael didn't know whether to laugh or feel annoyed by her. I know, but I need you to get this business up and running here. You are the best gal for the job. Now be a sweetheart and understand it. Michael poured all the ingredients into the boiling water as the water slowly changed from purple to emerald green to a sparkling golden color. Michael then took out a healing potion infused with nanites, aka the blood tonic, and poured it into the brew. When Michael first created the blood tonic, it was a muddy brown potion that had an unstable state. Over the past several months, Michael managed to infuse the blood tonic with healing potions. The only downside of mixing blood tonic with healing potions was that purity took a 5% hit. In other words, the pure healing potions had 98% purity, while blood tonic infused potions had 93% purity. This blood tonic infused potion gave a massive advantage to Michael over his enemies. For instance, he managed to poison Ethan in front of Noah and Rowena. If Michael wished, he could make Ethan burst into a bloody mess with a single snap of his fingers. Michael left the cauldron and flew back to Gaia. Seeing Michael land beside her, Gaia turned away from him. However, Michael just hugged her from behind and rested his hands on her shoulder. Don't even try to calm me down, she growled, but didn't try to squirm out of his embrace. After I return from the Sea Realm, I will take you on a long vacation. Wherever you choose, no questions asked. I will drop everything and spend as much time as you want. Gaia shook her head. There is only one thing you can promise that will make me less pissed off, said Gaia. What is it? Asked Michael. Promise me you will marry me once you return. Chapter 885, Waiting for Hammond's Arrival. 3 days later, Noah landed on the beautiful valley with green foliage and newly sprung buds. Majestic mountains surrounded this valley, void of any life, and had a story to tell about an unspeakable horror that transpired several years ago. What do you sense, teacher? Noah asked Andreas after he landed in the middle of the valley. Andreas' ethereal figure appeared before Noah. Following Noah, several guardians and a guardian ship came to the scene. The flying ship cast a large shadow upon the ground as more and more guardians carrying various tools descended from the ship. While Andreas was looking around the valley, beyond the distant horizon, dark and vengeful cloud formations started to imprint their marks on the crystal-clear blue sky, signifying the imminent arrival of an intense and powerful thunderstorm. Lots of people died here, Noah, Andreas said. Noah heaved a long sigh as he expected Andreas to tell him otherwise. When Ghost was in his home, he said something about a village called Hog's Feet in Gondolin. The moment Noah asked Hammond about this village, Noah saw the utter terror and shock in his eyes. Noah didn't want to believe Ghost was wrong about Hammond. However, the look in Hammond's eyes when he asked about the village was apparent. Hammond hid his involvement in the village's disappearance until Noah pressed him. What are your orders, Supreme Guardian? Neela came to Noah carrying a pickaxe with several runes engraved. In addition to the guardians with digging tools such as pickaxes and shovels, several drillers and contraptions capable of excavating got dropped from the ship above. Dig here, Andreas said to Neela. Noah's team and the others had no idea what was buried in the ground. Since they were ordered to dig, each had their own idea. Some thought of priceless artifacts, and some thought of a dungeon. As the first drilling contraption penetrated the ground, strong gusts of wind were unleashed and started to impulse the dim and murky clouds closer and closer. The once clear sky was steadily engulfed by darkness. Clusters of storm clouds washed away the sky's brilliant colors. These dark clouds created irregular openings in the nebulous sky, simulating a vast abstract painting with every imaginable color. The air started to feel thick and heavy, as though it was trying to suffocate the valley. Howling and wailing came the barren wind as darkness enveloped the valley. Noah looked up at the darkness in the sky and imminently thought of Ghost, the god of darkness. He felt like Ghost was watching and laughing at them. He is going to be right again, Noah said. No, Noah. He just sees the darkness in everyone and assumes the worst of them. You do the opposite, said Andreas. Maybe I should change how I see things. Andreas shook his head as he flew closer to Noah. He floated beside Noah and watched the guardians dig silently for a few moments. I have lived for thousands of years, Noah. My long life has allowed me to see through people for who they are. Hammond is no murderer. We don't know the complete story of what really happened here or who was responsible for it. But I can tell you one thing, the Empress was in on it. Nothing would happen without her knowing, so how did she not know what happened here? And ask yourself this question, how did the Dark Lord know about this, said Andreas. A sudden bolt of lightning shattered the darkened and ominous sky in the utmost vicious manner, snapping Noah out of his train of thought. Earth-shattering rumbles of thunder followed the lightning and sent shockwaves to the surrounding areas pugnaciously. Then for a short moment, everything retreated into oblivion. The relentless wind held its breath and intensity. Abruptly, several twisted streaks of pure light tore open the dark sky, opening the way for a heavy downpour. The rain came down from the sky like an army of miniature arrows, destroying everything in their paths. Bolts of giant lightning, devastating thunders, and unpredictable rhythms of the merciless torrential rainfall unleashed the evil force of nature. The wicked thunderstorm continuously exerted its intense attacks on the valley and the guardians. The sky had opened, releasing continuous heavy rain, which flooded every corner of the valley, filling the holes created by the contraptions. The rock-like raindrops were pounding and hammering against the contraptions with a vigorous rhythm as rumbling thunders replicated the perpetual pounding sounds of a drum concert. Water levels slowly rose in the valley, threatening to stall the Guardians. The Dark Lord was threatened by Hammond and his intelligence, Noah. He will do anything to manipulate you into punishing Hammond, Andreas stated. Eventually, the Guardians managed to dig a large hole and waited for Noah to venture into the dark hole. Noah strolled toward the hole under the heavy downspout. When he reached the edge, Mila and his team of elites, including Alvaro, came to his side. "What do you hope to find in there, Supreme Guardian?" asked Mila. However, Noah did not give them any answer. Instead, he just stepped forward and fell straight into the hole. While falling down, Noah summoned a ball of light to illuminate his surroundings. He descended for a minute but saw nothing but mud around him. When Noah hoped everything Hammond said would turn into a dream, he began to smell the strong stench of rotting corpses. The smell overwhelmed Noah and almost made him throw up his inside out. Noah immediately stopped descending and formed a bubble around his face to filter the air. Even for a god like him, the stench was too much. He slowly descended down with an orb of light hovering above his head until he saw a face in the mud. Noah was taken aback by the sudden appearance of the rotten face in the mud as he flew back a meter. The face had yellowish eyes as skin slowly fell down, revealing grayish facial bones. The face looked fresh despite being buried in the ground for 5 years. Once Noah returned to where he saw the face, he touched the head as it fell off from the mud. Soon, Noah conjured several orbs of light and willed them to float around the hole. To his shock, the light illuminated countless bodies, barely decomposed to the bones. In fact, something kept the bodies from decomposing. Noah's heart sank, looking at the bodies buried within. He even noticed children among them. "Am I the only evildoer and criminal in your eyes?" The Dark Lord's words rang in Noah's head. Hammond had a hand in all this, Noah mumbled under his breath. "The dwarves forced him to build that device, Noah," said Andreas. "They had his girlfriend." "He had no choice," Andreas sighed. "These people need a proper burial." Noah couldn't think about Hammond or anyone except the poor people buried alive in their own village. Since the Empress sought after everyone who had a hand in the Hog's Feet village massacre, Noah had nothing to do except give the villagers a proper burial. They deserved it that much. With a heavy heart, Noah flew upward and exited the hole. Noah felt a lump in his throat as he couldn't utter anything. His heart bled for the villagers and wanted to rip those dwarves to shreds. The killing intent he buried deep within started to slip through his heavy heart. Fortunately, the dwarves who were responsible for the massacre were hung to death by the Empress. "Nila," Noah called Nila. "I want to meet the leader of Hontorum." "Set up a meeting," said Noah. Looking at Noah's eyes burning with rage and anger, Nila dared not to question him even though she had so many. "Would you like me to do anything else, Supreme Guardian?" asked Nila. "Dig out all the bodies inside. I want to give them a proper burial." Noah's words stunned Nila. Bodies were the last thing she thought were buried in the ground. After issuing the orders, Noah flew away from the valley to clear his head. He wanted to be alone to calm his mind and soul. Just after Noah left the valley, a dark-robed figure landed on a mountaintop from where one could see the entire excavation. The figure slowly removed the hood, revealing the striking golden hair and the pointy ears that were neither too pointy nor blunt like human ears. On her forearm, she had a black spider with glowing red eyes tattooed on it. Looking at the excavation site, the half-elf placed her hand on her ear. "Elder Trista," the half-elf talked in the sweetest voice. Her voice could alone seduce even the most strong-hearted man. "I have eyes on Hog's Feet, good. Keep yourself hidden and wait for them to unearth all the bodies," said Trista. "Remember, Spider. This is a simple task, so do not fail me. Lenora's life depends on your success. Come on, Elder Trista. I have finished much harder tasks for Elder Lenora. This is just a simple monitor and report. If anything, this task is way beneath my standards," Spider snickered. Read chapter 648 Vampire Death Squad to refresh your memories. It would be a simple task if Noah Winston wasn't there. The Dark Queen wants you to locate the one called Hammond without alerting Noah of your presence, Elder Trista. What if that human doesn't show up as the Dark Queen says? I could track him down, said Spider. Apparently, Hammond has a hand in their deaths. So the Dark Queen believes the guilt in him would bring him here to pay his last respects. I agree with her. Humans like him tend to fight their guilt by doing pointless things, said Trista. If what I heard about Hammond was not an exaggeration, I doubt Noah would let him out of his sight. How does the Dark Queen plan to take him down when the Supreme Guardian is around? Asked Spider. Who says anything about the Dark Queen taking him down? Trista asked Spider. Her silence spoke more volumes, and the mere thought of seeing him stirred the excitement Spider hadn't felt in years. Report to me as soon as you see Hammond. Then, you might get to see the Dark Lord as you wished. Chapter 886. The Dark Lord sends his regards. The Phoenix Island glistened beneath the full moon like a jewel atop the clear blue sea. A couple of ships sailed toward the island to conduct business with the Phoenix Manor. To the naked eye, Phoenix Island looked no different than before. However, the entire island had a defensive array that formed an energy dome around the island. Lord Julius, the leader of Phoenix Manor, spared no expense in increasing the island's security. He was one of the few who made enemies out of Ghost while still a body-strengthening stage warrior. At that time, Julius never considered Ghost the Dark Lord, the most feared person in the world. Is this the place? Asked Vidora sitting atop Gaia's shoulders. A big burly figure standing almost 7 feet tall hovered behind Gaia with a giant axe on his back. The big man's eyes glistened like rubies under his dark hood. I doubt they would give us a warm welcome, so we should let ourselves in, Gaia said coldly. What a pity. That fool should have accepted our offer, Saber sighed. 2 days ago, Gaia sent one from the Dark Army to Lord Julius regarding a meeting between him and Gaia. She wanted to establish an alliance to distribute the Red Bliss, Michael's new brew, throughout the Elon and Azer continent. Despite what happened to her during her last visit to Phoenix Island, Gaia decided to forgive Julius and be a better person. To be honest, Gaia needed Lord Julius' connection and his operation to distribute the Red Bliss efficiently. Not that Gaia could not build a distribution system, but it would take at least a year to create a large-scale operation like Lord Julius. The Dark Army needed a revenue stream as soon as possible. So Gaia had no time to create a distribution system from the ground up. For some reason, Lord Julius did not only refuse to meet her but also hung the messenger to death as a warning to the Dark Army. Now that Lord Julius had dared to kill the Dark Lord's man, Gaia decided to visit him personally. As she slowly floated toward the island, Gaia took out a golden scroll and tore it in half. Countless golden pecks of light scattered from the scroll as they formed a glowing rune in the air. The rune vibrated for a moment before dashing toward the island. Gaia watched the rune fly until she saw the rune hit an invisible wall and create ripples in the air. The rune was stuck to the energy dome as Gaia tore another golden scroll. Just like before, another rune appeared from the specks of light and flew straight to the rune. When the two runes came closer, they merged to form a glowing sword that cut through the energy dome. Once the sword created an opening for Gaia, she squeezed through the cut with the big burly man. The golden sword formed from the runes vanished after a few seconds as the cut in the energy dome slowly closed itself. I know Elidor's rune will work, said Sarba. Shoo, Gaia shushed them as she noticed several guards flying around the island and soldiers patrolling the island on the ground. The weakest of the guards seemed to be at the core formation stage, and the strongest was at the half-immortal stage. As Gaia expected, the half-immortal was a beast-man. He had the lower body of a muscular human and the upper body of a wolf. With crescent-shaped blades, the wolf-headed man led a group of soul refiners around the island. Do you want me to take care of him, my lady? The man hovering behind Gaia asked in a thick voice filled with bloodlust. I like your enthusiasm, Bear. But let's greet Lord Julius first. If the wolf intervenes in our business, you can have him, said Gaia. Bear nodded. Gaia could have taken anyone from the vampire squad, but she chose Bear for his method of killing. According to Trista and bartender Donovan in the Vampire Tavern, Bear was the best man for the job when one needed to make a bloody statement. His monstrous physical stature, coupled with vampire traits, made Bear a ferocious killing machine. To be honest, Gaia couldn't wait to see him in action. They had big plans for the Vampire Death Squad, and this was Gaia's first test to see how they operate in missions. Blending with the darkness, Gaia slowly flew toward the lavish faunic manor surrounded by majestic waterfalls and red maple trees. With a flick of her wrist, Gaia took out a sparkling silver potion from her space ring. She chugged the potion down her throat and tossed another one to Bear. He caught the potion with his big hand and looked at Gaia with a bewildered look on his face. "Drink this. It will mask our scent," said Gaia. Since Lord Julius was a beast man, he hired most of his guards from the Beast Kingdom. These beast men relied on their sense of smell more than their sight and hearing. That's where this potion came into the picture. Drinking the potion would completely mask all the smell coming from their bodies and make them invisible to the beast men's noses. Once Bear emptied the potion into his mouth, he wiped off his mouth and followed behind the Dark Queen. Normally, the guards would have noticed if someone flew toward the manor, even if they were dressed in black to blend in with the darkness. However, Gaia's half-immortal cultivation stage with cosmic energy and Bear's vampire trait made them fast enough to avoid all the guards outside. Thanks to the potion, even the half-immortal stage wolf failed to sense the intruders. Instead of foolishly barging through the front door, Gaia targeted the open window on the 4th floor of the mansion. She was able to fly straight through the window, slightly adjusting her body, but Bear couldn't get his body through. So Gaia had to look around the empty room and help Bear get through without breaking the window. "I would have preferred the front door," Bear growled. "I know, big guy," Gaia patted him on the shoulder with a chuckle. Meanwhile, Lord Julius was discussing the recent events with the elders in a lavish hall. A golden chandelier hanging from the ceiling lit the hall brightly with its warm light. Narrow, washed glass windows were bordered by drapes colored the same orchid as the banners let the dazzling moonlight, adding another layer of charm to the hall. Julius sat on a radiant throne of porcelain between two lion statues. The elders had dark lines on their foreheads as they tried to form a plan to face the Dark Lord's wrath. Contrary to their advice, Lord Julius killed the Dark Lord's minion. "Lord Julius, I have sent a messenger to the Beast Kingdom, asking the Beast King for his help. While we wait for his response, why don't we inform the Guardian Guild and the Supreme Guardian about all this?" A short-haired man with a brown goatee said. "We beast men do not need the help of a human, no matter his status. All humans are the same," Lord Julius growled. "Once the Beast King sees my letter, he will contact the Beast Clan and send us the Harbingers. We can hold the fort until then." The elders weren't completely on board with Julius' plan to go against the Dark Lord. To be honest, most of them wanted to accept the Dark Lord's offer instead of going against him. If Julius had accepted the offer, they could have asked the Dark Lord permission to conduct business in the southern continent. At the moment, the Dark Lord's forces controlled the sea around the southern continent. Since Lord Julius and Ghost had a quarrel during the annual Phoenix Manor auction, they avoided venturing to the southern continent, fearing the Dark Lord's wrath. Lord Julius, on the other hand, went against the elders' wishes and kicked a golden opportunity out the door. As merchants, they knew the importance of expanding their business. Even if they had nothing to gain, they would have accepted the offer just to avoid the Dark Lord's wrath. But Lord Julius did just that, and now they had to fear for their lives. No disrespect, Lord Julius, but have you thought this through? Even if the Beast King sent us the Harbingers, I doubt they could go against the Dark Lord. I think we can all agree that killing the messenger was unnecessary, if not outright foolishness." The elder who spoke his mind was a beast man with a fox's head. He had orange-hue fur and a bushy tail sticking out of his back. When Lord Julius heard his words, his eyes burned with rage as the elder cowered in fear. Among the beast men, fox kind was not famous for their valor like lion kind. Hence, Elder Zod felt a chill running down his spine once he saw the murderous look in Julius' eyes. Just when Elder Zod was about to apologize to Lord Julius for his brazen words, all the leaders in the hall heard thudding noise outside. Their animalistic ears twitched as they heard heavy footsteps sounding louder and louder with each passing second. Lord Julius rose from his throne as the marble door at the end of the hall shattered into chunks and pieces. The explosion caused a cloud of dust and smoke to envelop the doorway. As a result, the elders immediately tensed, preparing to defend themselves. Soon, they saw two shadows through the smoke. The elders almost jumped back when they saw a severed head fly through the smoke and land right beneath Julius' feet. Their heads turned to the head at Julius' feet. But when they heard a melodious whistling, they slowly turned around to see a young woman wearing black armor and a 7-feet-tall giant with a bloody axe walking out of the smoke. The Dark Queen. The elders immediately recognized the young woman and began to tremble in utter fear. Just the mere sight of the Dark Queen made an elder faint in terror. Under their shocked gazes, the Dark Queen calmly strolled toward them, whistling a strange tune and cracking her knuckles. She didn't bother to mind the elders but kept her unwavering gaze on Julius. "The Dark Lord sends his regards, Lord Julius," Gaia said before nodding at Bear. The next thing the elders saw was the battle axe flying toward Lord Julius and impaling his chest to his very throne. The giant axe almost split Julius' chest in half. Blood oozed out of his chest as the light of life vanished from his eyes. Gaia gave no chance for Julius to explain or even open his mouth because she was there to send a message, not to converse. Judging by the horrifying looks on the elders' faces, she could tell her message reached them all right. Chapter 887, Distribution of the Red Bliss. The elders shivered in terror as blood gushed from Lord Julius' body. The blood oozing down formed a puddle under Julius' feet and reflected the golden light coming from the chandelier. "Shoo!" Gaia shushed everyone when a cat-faced elder tried to shout out for the guards. But the elder quickly closed his mouth when he saw the Dark Queen's gaze fall on him. The others found it hard even to take a deep breath under her presence. Complete silence swept across the hall as Gaia strolled toward Julius' body. She grabbed Julius' hand, pulled out the space ring, and held it in her palm. The elders saw a dim glow appear around the ring for a moment before the Dark Queen put the space ring back on his finger. They had no idea what she did. Considering Julius was the leader of the Phoenix Manor, Gaia knew he would have millions of gold coins in his space ring. As she expected, Lord Julius did have 50 million gold coins and a pay cube. Instead of taking the pay cube, Gaia just took the 50 million. Now that she had taken care of Julius and his gold coins, she took a step forward toward the elders. Sitting atop Gaia's shoulder, Vidora scanned the elders and looked at them menacingly. The sight of a majestic creature like Vidora stunned the elders. However, they were too afraid to wonder about Vidora. After giving the elders a few moments to drown in their own fear, Gaia opened her mouth. "To the outside world, you elders sent Lord Julius away to protect him from the Dark Lord. Now who has a problem listening to me?" asked Gaia. None of the elders dared to open their mouths, although some of them wanted to shout for the guards. Yet, deep down they knew there was no point in calling the guards, especially after they sensed the Dark Queen's half-immortal stage cultivation. The strongest guard they had was a Hal Immortal, but they doubted he could go head-to-head with the Dark Queen. Besides, they already made a grave mistake by killing the Dark Lord's man. Suppose they raised their hand against the Dark Queen herself, the next and the last person they see would be the Dark Lord. As experienced merchants, each of them knew when to cut their losses and agreed to the opposite party's terms. Gaia turned her gaze at Elder Zod, the fox-headed elder who dared to question Julius about his actions. While the elders were shivering in fear, Bear went to Julius' body and stood beside it. "I name you as the acting leader of Phoenix Manor in Julius' absence. Those who disagree with me, raise their hands," said Gaia as Bear slowly licked the blood trickling down from the axe handle, which sent shivers running down the elders' spines. The elders looked at each other wordlessly, expressing their fear and agreement. They all wanted to get out of this hall alive. It was their highest priority. Seeing no hands in the air, Gaia smiled. "That's more like it. What's your name?" Gaia asked Zod. Zod, said Zod. Zod, I am confident you will listen to what you are told and lead our Phoenix Manor to its new preposterous era, said Gaia. After giving a few moments for the elders to comprehend everything and calm their minds, Gaia continued. I am certain each of you must have gone through countless complex business transactions. On the contrary, what I offer is simple. Distribute our products through your channels, and each will get 5% of the profit. Go against us in any way, we will kill you, next of your kin, and take half of your wealth as a statement. I am mean, come on, Gaia shrugged. The great right clans won't come to save you, just like they didn't come to save Ithilien. They witnessed the Dark Lord slaughter thousands of soldiers without raising a finger. So do you think they would come to rescue a single beast man? You know better than that. Unlike them, the Dark Lord takes care of those who follow him. He can make you a very rich person or a dead one. The choice is yours, said Gaia. Now, if you have any questions, you may ask them. Zod was the first one to question the Dark Queen. The others were still too afraid even to take a breath, let alone question her. My lady, what are we going to distribute? Asked Zod. Red Bliss, a new kind of beverage. Trust me, it's going to replace all the ale, beer, and everything the people drink now. The dwarven ale is like muddy water compared to what we are about to distribute, the Red Bliss. Gaia paused for a moment and went on. You will receive the first batch tomorrow. Distribute them for free. Give people a free taste of our product and hook them in. From the next batch, you will sell each bottle for 3,000 coins. We will raise the price once it gets more popular among the patrons. As soon as the elders heard the price, they gasped in shock. In their minds, the price was simply outrageous. Even a dwarven ale cost 1,000 coins per bottle, and they were the finest in the whole world. Only the rich could afford such pleasantries. Unfortunately, the percentage of the poor outnumbered the rich. When it came to food and drinks, any merchant would target the poor because of the wider customer base. Selling a bottle for 3,000 coins seemed like an impossible task. The elders opened their mouths and quickly closed them, fearing their words would bring nothing but the Dark Queen's wrath upon them. Judging by the looks on their faces, Gaia knew what they were thinking. In fact, she could read them like open books. I did say give the first batch for free. Just do as I say and watch the Red Bliss take over the world. Soon, we are going to be swimming in gold coins. Tell them about the brew's origin, Iag whispered into Gaia's ears. And yes, the smile on Gaia's face vanished as she said, I know you have policies against revealing a product's source or origin. But if you are pushed by the Guardians, for example, the Red Bliss comes from the southern continent, and that's all you could say. And don't fret about the Guardians for now. The Dark Lord will handle them. You just focus on the task at hand. Do we understand each other? Gaia's cold gaze swept across the hall as the elders quickly bobbed their heads up and down. Now that the elders agreed with her, she turned around and looked at Julius' body. It's time to clean this mess, said Gaia. Then, she flicked her wrist as a colorless potion appeared in her hand. She poured out the liquid inside onto the blood. The moment the potion touched the blood, it sizzled like hot oil. Under their gazes, the colorless potion made the blood vaporize from the ground. In a few minutes, the blood under Julius' body completely vanished, leaving a shiny marble floor. Everyone, including Bear, was completely stunned by the sight. Even his vampire senses failed him as he couldn't smell any blood at all. After cleaning up the blood, only Julius' body remained. Taking care of the body was easier than cleaning the blood. Gaia just raised her hand as a green mist shot out of her hand and enveloped the body. It covered the body like a jade bubble. Gaia then snapped her fingers as sparks flew out from her fingers toward the bubble. As soon as the sparks met the bubble, they lit up the bubble. The bubble burned with intense heat. Everything around them had a green hue due to the emerald green flames. The flames burned hotter and brighter for a few seconds until the body completely vanished from the throne. Thud. Bear's giant axe fell from the throne. He picked it up, gave a short lick to the blade, and sheathed it behind him. When Gaia turned around, the elders looked pale. They sweated like pigs. Their eyes glistened with complete fear, putting a smile on Gaia's face. Till now, I told you what you must do. Now I will tell you what you must. Gaia's gaze turned cold as the elders felt the murderous aura coming off her. Red bliss is not for you to consume. Do not drink it. I don't want the pillars of my distribution to turn into addicts. Remember your family whenever you get a temptation to have a taste, Gaia threatened the elders. Eventually, Gaia dismissed the elders but not before making them wear necklaces with spiders attached. She knew better than to trust a merchant. With the spiders attached to them, Azazel could monitor every single one of them and inform her if they attempted to do something foolish. Except for Zod, everyone else left the room. The fox-headed elder peeked through the broken door and ensured no one could hear them. You did good, Zod, said Gaia. We gave you the position you longed for. I hope for your sake you don't do anything foolish once you ascend to that throne. Gaia pointed at Julia's throne. The elders thought it was random that the Dark Queen chose Zod as the next leader. To be honest, they were relieved to see someone else get chosen. What they didn't know was Zod made a deal with the Dark Queen before even she arrived at the manor and killed Julius. Thanks to Sadie and her girls, he was able to contact the Dark Queen and ask for the Phoenix Manor throne in exchange for his undying loyalty. His proposition turned Gaia's initial plan of slaughtering everyone in the higher-ups to kill only Julius and make Zod the next leader. Her plan worked flawlessly, to say the least. I want dare, my lady. I will serve you till the last breath. Zod knelt down before her and pledged his loyalty once again. But my lady, what about the Harbingers? What if they tried to meddle with our business? Asked Zod. They aren't the only death squad, Zod. Gaia smiled like a devil. Chapter 888, Sea Bandits. Far away in the Crystal Ocean, Mutrad flew above the ocean with Michael. They were heading for the realm of sea folk under a magical starry sky. The only companion they had was the dazzling moon in the sky. Eventually, after flying for a full 5 hours, Mutrad slowed down. It's here, Mutrad pointed at the open water to Michael. You might feel a tingling, said Mutrad. With a nod, Michael agreed to Mutrad cast the spell needed to dive into the water and travel to their homeworld. Mutrad raised his hand as Michael noticed a translucent shield materialize around them both. Shall we? Mutrad asked as Michael nodded. Gradually, they moved downwards and soon entered the ocean. Thanks to the shield around them, they didn't get wet and were able to breathe as though they were above the water. Michael calmly watched the clear blue ocean around him and the flocks of fish swimming past them. Tell me about your world, Mutrad. Start with how many kingdoms are there, Michael asked Mutrad. We don't have kingdoms ruled by kings and queens like the land walkers. Instead, my world is divided into 3 empires. Water God Hall, Sea Serpent Hall, and Arctic Hall rule each. Michael knew the Water God Hall and the Sea Serpent Hall were part of the Great 8 clans. If what Gaia told him was true, these 2 clans were stronger than the Guardian Guild itself. Unlike the Guardian Guild, the Sea Folk clans waged way fewer wars and avoided meddling in others' affairs. Each of them is not a clan per se but an empire itself. Michael took a mental note of everything Mutrad said. The earthen who forged the medallion is in the Sea Serpent Hall. While Michael was flying with Mutrad, he learned a few things about the sea realm. For instance, the sea folk had 5 races: mermans, earthens, wraiths, inferiors, and giants. Mutrad belonged to the wraiths kind, who could transform into humanoid form to walk the land. Apparently, the rest of the sea folk kind did not consider inferiors as their kind since they were technically land whalers. According to Mutrad, children who got lost in the sea would be taken by the sea realm and raised among other land walkers. Michael was surprised to learn that there were thousands of land walkers, including humans, elves, dwarves, and beast-men, living in the sea folks as inferiors. They were raised from a little age to fight and die for the sea folk in wars. Luckily for them, sea folks hadn't entered into a large-scale war in thousands of years. However, if a war did arise, the inferiors had to fight in the front line and serve as cannon fodders to the rest. Keep in mind while you are in my world, you will be considered an inferior. Certain places are restricted for you from entering. And please try not to start any wars, Mutrad pleaded with Michael, only to see him chuckle. I thought you loved wars. War is evil, but it is often the lesser evil, Dark Lord. I have no quarrel against your kind Mutrad even though they sent you after me. But if they had taken Harry, that's another matter entirely. I hope for everyone's sake it's not the case, Mutrad sighed. Me too, Mutrad. Me too. They continued to dive deeper into the ocean, and eventually, everything around them turned dark. Michael looked around the dark ocean in wonder as this was the first time he had gone this much deep into the ocean. Without the shield around them, he could tell they would be crushed by sheer pressure. Obviously, the darkness made Michael feel stronger. Despite how strong he felt, the unknown territory and the utter silence slightly caused uneasiness in his heart. Once I drop you in the Sea Serpent Hall, look for a great whale tavern. You might not believe it, but my world is not that much different from yours. We have all the bells and whistles. I will return after I finish dealing with some things in the Arctic Hall, said Mutrad. You don't have to. You have already jeopardized your position by escorting me into your world. Just give me the name of the Earthen, and I will take care of the rest, thank you, but I already arranged for someone to help you during your stay in the Sea Realm. He is an inferior, but he knows the realm like the back of his hand. He will meet you in the Great Whale. Once you reach the tavern, look for a red-haired one with freckles. What's his story? Asked Michael. The typical. Inferiors don't have much to tell about them. He was found in a shipwreck as a baby. We took him in, and he has lived in the realm ever since. You trust him? Mutrad shook his head. He is trustworthy enough. I've known him for years. When you want to find someone or something in the sea realm, you need Dylan on your side. He knows every crook in the world. Just a friendly reminder, Dylan is a coward. He will bolt out as soon as he senses a threat to his life. So keep that in mind, noted. Michael nodded. Even after almost an hour of diving down, Michael hadn't seen a single settlement in the water. In fact, he saw no bottom as the ocean seemed bottomless. Except for the few luminescent jellyfishes, they had no light sources. Eventually, Michael grew a bit tired of doing nothing. How long till we reach your world? Asked Michael. Mutrad looked at the golden compass in his hand for a moment before answering Michael. 10 minutes. Finally, Michael sensed several people in his environmental scanning. Michael was surprised to see these people slowly surrounding them as though they planned to ambush them. How about that? A welcoming party. Michael stretched his arms. What are you talking about? Mutrad was confused. He didn't arrange any welcoming party. In fact, Mutrad told no soul except Dylan about bringing another one to their world. A few moments later, Mutrad realized what the Dark Lord meant by a welcoming party. Shit, I should have expected this, Mutrad mumbled under his breath, thinking the Dark Lord wouldn't hear him. The sight of bandits annoyed Mutrad. He thought he could reach his world without coming across the bandits, but his bad luck brought the bandits right to them. What do we have here? Michael heard a voice. For the first time, Michael saw a sea folk man in his true form. Calling him a man would be a bit of a stretch considering the figure had no humanoid features except 2 hands. Each hand only had 3 fingers and was covered in thick scales. Holding a trident in one hand, the Earthen moved toward them, a talking carp. Michael was amused by the Earthen. This person immediately reminded Michael of carp fish as he looked exactly like one. His diamond-shaped scales radiated a dim golden glow. The others around Michael lacked the same glow as the one with the trident. If Michael had to guess, he would say the soul-refining cultivation might be the reason for the glow in his body. Nonetheless, Michael was not an expert in sea folk anatomy. Thus, he remained silent, waiting for Mutrad to make the first move. Something told Michael that Mutrad and the Earthen were no strangers to each other. In the Earthen's eyes, Mutrad stood beside just a weak body strengthening stage inferior. Since Michael didn't mimic a fusion stage warrior's energy radiation, the bandits naturally thought of him as an inferior who grew up in the sea realm. Anyone else, namely any outsiders, must be at the fusion stage to survive the pressure despite having a sea folk kind and their shield. The young master of House Halrid is trying to enter the sea realm through the back door. What a strange sight indeed, the earthen holding the trident said. Despite being in the water, Michael heard the earthen loud and clear. This does not concern you, Cato. Move away, Murtrad growled. I beg to differ, my friend, the earthen shook his head. Then, he slowly started to circle around them. Michael watched the earthen and his underlings surround them without uttering a word. To be honest, Michael was amused by the talking fish and wanted to see where this was going. You are in my backyard. The last I checked, you didn't ask my permission to step into my backyard. So what should I do with you? Cato rubbed the strand of hair hanging from his chin. Cato, for your sake, leave us alone. We can settle whatever dispute we have later. Murtrad tried to save Cato from the Dark Lord's wrath. Although Murtrad was at the fusion stage, he wasn't strong enough to take on all the earthen around him. It was an earthen territory where they had the advantage of home ground. Most of Murtrad's spells wouldn't work in the water as they would in any of the three empires. Besides, if Murtrad went all in, it would certainly draw some unwanted attention or worse, the attention of the giants. Cato was surprised to see Murtrad, the arrogant young master of House Halrid, trying to talk his way out instead of battling. You and I both know how much I loathe the land walkers. I killed my fair share of them. But recently, a human has inspired me. You must have heard of him, given you spent the last year among the land walkers. They call him the Dark Lord. The moment Michael heard Cato talk about him, he was pleasantly surprised and shocked to see his reputation had reached some bandits in the sea realm. A year ago, he took over those pesky pirates and united them under his rule. When me and my brothers expected him to pillage and wreak havoc among the merchants, he surprised us by not doing that. You know what he did? Cato paused and moved to meet Murtrad in his eyes. He put a rule that to conduct business in his waters safely, the merchants have to pay a percentage of what they transport. Now some of my brothers thought, why take a pie when you can have the whole pie? Do you know what I said? Cato waited until Murtrad shook his head. I said if you take the whole pie forcefully, the people will eventually stop bringing pie altogether. But if you take one piece from one pie, they wouldn't mind it and will keep bringing them. All we have to do then is do nothing and enjoy the tributes. What are you getting at, Cato? Murtrad snarled. Just like the Dark Lord, a silly name if you ask me, Cato laughed as Murtrad glanced at the Dark Lord, who seemed calm as usual. I want a piece of what you have. Cato's voice completely turned colder. Soon, his underlings summoned their weapons out and raised them against Michael and Murtrad. Hand over your space rings, both of you, Cato threatened them. Murtrad was abruptly cut short by Michael. When Cato saw the inferior move in front of Murtrad, he frowned. Let me ask you something, Cato. What do you taste like? Asked Michael as black lightning bolts began to crackle around his wrists. Chapter 889. The Reign of Terror begins. Cato stood before Michael, his small frame relaxed with confidence. He had no idea that the human before him was the Dark Lord in disguise. To Cato, the human was just another inferior, one that he could easily kill with a single stab. An inferior with some balls. You think you're powerful? Ha! You're nothing compared to me, Cato spoke with his chin held high and a smirk on his face. He looked around at his minions with a dismissive glance before settling his gaze on Michael. Are you daft or something, human? Cato scoffed, his eyes glinting with amusement. Take a good look around you. You're outnumbered, outmatched, and out of luck. Any one of us could tear you to shreds without even breaking a sweat. He pointed his fingers at his minions around Michael and Murtrad. You really thought you could take on a group of seasoned warriors like us? You must be either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Which is it? Cato then turned his gaze to Murtrad, who knew the situation had gone out of his hands. Instead of amusing Cato with words, Michael just narrowed his eyes, focusing all his power on the arrogant fool in front of him. The Dark Lord had had enough of Kato's antics, and he was ready to put an end to them once and for all. Floating outside the energy shield, Kato sensed the Dark Lord's approach and snarled, baring his razor-sharp teeth. But before he could raise a finger, the Dark Lord unleashed his power without hesitation. From his eyes shot powerful black dark beams, each one slicing through the water with deadly accuracy. Kato recoiled as the beams struck it, his scales sizzling and smoking from the intense heat. Since Michael wanted to prolong the battle for his own amusement, he didn't go all out in the battle. Thus, Kato survived the dark beams and shouted at his minions to strike them down. Break their shields and end them. Kato's scream echoed through the water. Despite the number of bandits around them, Michael held his ground. His power was overwhelming, and he showed no mercy. Each time the Dark Lord fired, the laser beams penetrated the head of a bandit, ending their life. The water boiled and sizzled as the beams sliced through the water with deadly accuracy, leaving a trail of smoking corpses in their wake. The remaining bandits tried to dodge the beams but were too slow. As he continued to fire, the bandits fell one by one, their bodies jerking and convulsing as the beams struck their heads, leaving a bloody hole right between their eyes. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a core-strengthening stage earthen bandit. The reward is 200,000 experience points and 4,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 7,000 badass points. In a few blinks of an eye, Michael ended the lives of all 10 bandits except Kato. Michael didn't even leave Mutrad's energy shield. All he did was stand his ground and fire dark beams. Considering the power gap between them, the bandits had no chance against Michael. As Michael slowly floated toward Kato with Mutrad, his eyes glowed in an ominous black. The water around them seemed to darken as the energy from his body rippled through the water. Kato's eyes widened in terror as he realized the full extent of the Dark Lord's power. The bandits who had once surrounded them were now motionless, their bodies still floating in the water. Their swords and spears lay forgotten at their sides, their lifeless eyes staring blankly into the distance as blood reddened the dark water. Kato's mind raced as he watched Michael approach. He knew he had to act fast if he was to stand any chance against this dark force. He tried to swim away, but the Dark Lord was too fast. Once again, Michael fired his dark beams, which sliced through the water with unrelenting force, striking Kato's body and causing him to scream out in agony. Arg! Kato's body convulsed as the beams hit him again and again. The water around him churned with his thrashing as he tried to escape the Dark Lord's deadly attack. But it was no use. The Dark Lord's power was too great. Everything around Kato turned blurry. One moment he was at his peak, and the next, the human he thought of as a weak inferior ended his whole gang's life in mere moments. His mind was still processing and trying to comprehend what had just happened. Kato gasped for breath as he clutched his chest, the pain overwhelming him. He looked up at the Dark Lord with fear in his eyes. Who are you?" he croaked. Looking at Kato's status, Mutrad could only sigh. He did warn Kato to leave them alone, yet the arrogant earthen chose to mess with them. Unfortunately for Kato, he chose the wrong prey to hunt today. "I am the one who inspired you, Kato. Don't you know me?" Michael tilted his head as he regarded Kato with a cold smile. Kato's body was racked with pain from the Dark Lord's attack. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The human who stood before him only moments ago had transformed into the Dark Lord himself. His eyes glowed with eerie black energy, and Kato could feel the power emanating from him. For a moment, Kato was frozen in shock and disbelief. He had thought the Dark Lord to be just a mortal, someone who posed no threat to him or his underlings. But now, he realized the grave mistake he had made. Kato struggled to move, to defend himself, but the pain was too much. He could only lay there and watch in horror as the Dark Lord loomed over him. The shock of the situation made it hard for him to think or react, and he felt helpless before the Dark Lord's power. Kato coughed weakly, his strength rapidly fading. "Please, help me," he begged. The Dark Lord's sudden appearance had been unexpected, and his encounter with Cato had left Mutrad with a nagging feeling that their peaceful existence in the sea realm was about to be shattered. He stole a quick glance at the Dark Lord, who floated effortlessly beside him, his black robes billowing in the current. The Dark Lord's piercing gaze was fixed on the distant water, and Mutrad couldn't help but wonder what other surprises the Dark Lord had in store for them. A shiver ran down Mutrad's spine as he relived the memories of the Dark Lord's wrath. The sight of Ithelin's soldiers and the royal family of Thusia being mercilessly slaughtered and reduced to ruins by the Dark Lord was etched into his mind. It was a gruesome display of the Dark Lord's power and utter disregard for life that left Mutrad with a deep sense of unease. He couldn't help but think about the safety of his own world. Mutrad had made the decision to serve the Dark Lord in the first place to protect his world from the same fate as Ithelin. But as he glanced at the Dark Lord beside him, he couldn't shake off the feeling that something sinister was brewing. Mutrad knew the Dark Lord was capable of anything and was determined to do whatever it takes to prevent his world from becoming another Ithelin. Chapter 890. The City Beneath the Sea. Finally, Michael drifted through the dark water and spotted something in the distance that made him rub his eyes in disbelief. It was a glimmering city, seemingly made of white coral and shimmering pearls, resting on the sea bottom. The city was surrounded by a shimmering energy field that sparkled, protecting it from the surrounding waters. It sparkled and glimmered like a giant luminescent pearl, casting a radiant glow over the surrounding waters. The dome, the creation of the sea realm's most skilled runemasters and blacksmiths, was a true marvel of magical engineering. It was composed of a series of intricate runes, each infused with magical energy that worked together in perfect harmony to form a barrier. This barrier prevented water from flooding the city, even in the fiercest storms. The energy dome also serves another important purpose: it allows for a controlled climate within the city. Because the dome keeps the water outside at bay, the temperature and humidity levels within Atlantisia can be carefully regulated to provide the ideal environment for its inhabitants. Of course, maintaining such a powerful magical structure requires a great deal of skill and resources, which is why the merfolk and other creatures of Atlantisia take great care to protect and maintain their city's energy dome. As Michael moved closer to the city, he felt a sense of excitement and anticipation building within him. He had heard many stories of the Atlantic, a forgotten city back on Earth, but nothing could have prepared him for the breathtaking beauty of the city that lay before him. I have to say, it looks magical. Michael stood transfixed, gazing upon the enchanting sight before him with a profound sense of wonder and admiration. The scene that lay before his eyes seemed to possess a magical quality, evoking a sense of awe and amazement that left him utterly spellbound. I would like for it to stay that way. With a determined tone, Mutrad expressed his fervent desire for the preservation of his beloved city. The mere thought of witnessing his home reduced to ruins filled him with apprehension, and he resolved to do everything in his power to ensure its continued safety and prosperity. As Michael approached the city, the beauty of the architecture became more evident. The city of Serpent Hall was built on a series of concentric rings that spiraled outwards from the center of the city. These rings were composed of towering spires and elegant domed buildings that rose out of the ocean depths, each one more exquisite than the last. The outermost ring of the city was adorned with aquatic gardens filled with exotic sea plants and colorful fish that swam among the coral reefs. As one moved inward, bustling marketplaces, grand palaces, and towering temples were home to the city's most powerful and influential residents. At the heart of the city lay the royal palace, a towering structure of gleaming white coral and iridescent pearls that served as the residence of King Serpent, the leader of the Sea Serpent Hall and his court. The palace was surrounded by a series of walls and gardens and was accessible only by a series of grand underwater archways that led into its hallowed halls. Overall, the city was a stunning example of the beauty and ingenuity that could be achieved when magic and advanced engineering came together to create something truly extraordinary. In stark contrast to the cities Michael had traversed in his past travels, the absence of imposing guards patrolling the city's streets and extorting entrance fees came as a pleasant surprise. It was a rare and refreshing sight to behold, one that fostered a sense of trust and security in the hearts of those who called this place home. "Look," exclaimed Mutrad, extending his hand towards a magnificent aquatic garden in the near distance. the tavern is right next to the garden over there." The garden was a sprawling oasis of vibrant aquatic life, teeming with a myriad of colorful fish and exotic plant species. The tranquil atmosphere, punctuated by the gentle sounds of bubbling water and rustling foliage, imbued the surrounding area with an aura of peace and serenity. "I guess this is where our paths diverge," said Michael. In response, Mutrad nodded understandingly and made his way toward the shimmering energy shield. Hovering above the ground, he lowered himself gently, allowing Michael to pass through the barrier and onto the solid ground beyond. Before bidding Michael farewell and departing the city, Mutrad offered a gentle reminder, urging him to exercise caution and refrain from causing any unnecessary disturbance or chaos in his wake. "Take care not to create any mess," he advised, his voice tinged with a hint of concern as he turned to make his way out of the city limits. Upon entering the city, Michael was greeted by cautious inhabitants, and the first few people Michael saw inside the city were Earthens. Just like Cato, their bodies bore a striking resemblance to the graceful forms of carp or catfish, complete with shimmering scales that glimmered in the light. Despite their aquatic features, each of them had 2 arms, each with 3 fingers, allowing them to manipulate objects and interact with their surroundings in ways that defied their aquatic origins. Some of these creatures were also gifted with small feet that allowed them to walk on land with surprising agility, while others floated effortlessly above the ground, gliding with the grace of a dancer. Then, Michael noticed another kind. "They must be mermans," mumbled Michael. The mermans were the oldest race in the sea realm, whose appearance was a unique blend of the terrestrial and the aquatic. Strange and exotic plants bloomed all around him, their colors and shapes, unlike anything he had ever seen before. As soon as Michael entered the garden, the mermans, wraiths, and earthens looked down upon him with disdain. They saw him as just another inferior, someone from outside their world. Whispers and murmurs filled the air as they watched him approach. Some even backed away as if he might contaminate them with his presence. Despite their reactions, Michael pressed on, giving no damn about them. Little did the people know that he wasn't really an inferior but disguised himself as one for this mission. In his own world, he was known as the feared Dark Lord, but here he was, just another face in the crowd. When Michael passed them, he overheard some of the murmurs among the crowd. "Look at that inferior, probably lost or looking for scraps. Why would an inferior be in this part of the city? They don't belong here, disgusting, inferiors should know their place." As the crowd's murmurs continued to fill the air, Michael brushed them off and headed towards the tavern. Above the entrance, he spotted a board with the words, "Great Whale," etched onto it. It looked warm and inviting, with the soft glow of luminescent orbs casting a welcoming light upon its wooden exterior. Michael couldn't help but be intrigued by the lively sounds emanating from within the tavern, despite his concern for Harry. He wondered if any of the patrons had seen or heard anything about his son's whereabouts, although he very well knew it was unlikely. The scent of spiced seafood and ale wafts out into the street, tantalizing passers-by with promises of delicious food and drink. Michael stepped into the Great Whale and was greeted with a vibrant scene. The interior was brightly lit with candles and lanterns, casting a warm glow on the faces of the patrons. The interior was brightly lit with candles and lanterns, casting a warm glow on the faces of the patrons. Meanwhile, the sound of raucous laughter and lively chatter filled the room, creating an energetic atmosphere that was difficult to ignore. As he scanned the room, he noticed a mix of different races, each lost in their own conversations or huddled around the bar. However, one race seemed to be conspicuously missing, the mermans. He couldn't spot a single merman in the entire tavern, and it made him wonder if they avoided socializing with other races altogether. Despite the boisterous atmosphere, Michael's attention was drawn to a group of earthens sitting in the corner, deep in conversation. He couldn't help but overhear them talking about some recent events in the city, and he wondered if they had any clues that the Dark Lord was among them. Michael's eyes adjusted to the bright interior as he scanned the crowd, searching for any sign of Dillian. He had been given the name by Mutrad, a contact who was supposed to help him find the one who forged the shark head medallion. With the lively music played by a group of minstrels in the corner and patrons dancing, Michael made his way through the throngs of people, carefully squeezing between tables to avoid bumping into anyone. When he was about to ask the bartender, who was an inferior, Michael noticed someone sitting on the corner alone. In the dim candlelight on the table, Michael saw a youngster who had fiery red hair, freckles splattered across his nose and cheeks, and a fearful expression etched on his face. His eyes darted around the room as though he was ready to bolt at any moment. Michael sensed this was not the type of person to go on adventures or willingly involve themselves in risky situations. Instead, he looked like he spent a lot of time in shady places, surrounded by unsavory characters. Michael was certain that the red-haired youngster he saw was Dillian, as he matched the exact description provided by Mutrad. There was no mistaking it. Upon Michael's approach, Dylan's eyes narrowed slightly as if sizing him up with a quick once-over. However, after a moment, he seemed to relax and offer a small smile, conveying that he wasn't entirely hostile to Michael's presence. "You must be Dillian," said Michael before pulling back a chair and taking a seat opposite him. "Do you know who I am?" After Michael took a seat opposite Dillian, he asked the young man. In response, a sudden glimmer of shock and fear emerged in Dillian's eyes, causing Michael to notice how his body stiffened and recoiled slightly at the sound of his voice. A bead of sweat formed on Dillian's forehead, and his eyes darted around the room as if searching for an escape route. It was evident to Michael that Mutrad must have warned Dillian about him and perhaps even told him that Michael was the notorious Dark Lord. Dillian nodded slowly, his body still tense with fear. "I know you must be scared, Dillian," Michael said in a calm and reassuring tone. "But I'm not here to harm you. Mutrad sent me to find you. He said you could help me with something." Chapter 891, A Meeting in the Tavern. As Michael and Dylan chatted in the dimly lit corner of the tavern, an earthen waiter approached their table. The waiter had a sleek and streamlined body with shimmering scales that glinted under the tavern's flickering lights. Her face was elongated and tapered, and her large eyes glowed with an otherworldly luminescence. "Hello, gentlemen. What can I get for you?" the server asked, her voice carrying a faint hint of an accent that Michael couldn't quite place. Dylan grinned at him, revealing a mouthful of freckles. "I'll have my usual," he said, winking at the waiter. Dylan's lack of experience in the world outside of the sea realm meant that he wasn't too intimidated by Michael. Once Michael assured him he meant no harm, Dylan relaxed and resumed his usual demeanor. The server rolled her eyes playfully. "You know I can't serve you that here," she said, shaking her head. Dylan chuckled. "Fine, then. How about a pint of your best ale?" The server scribbled something down on her notepad before turning to Michael. "And for you, sir?" "I'll just have fruit juice, please." "No booze for me," Michael said, offering a polite smile. The server nodded, jotting down his order. "Coming right up," she said before heading back towards the bar. Dylan looked at Michael, a curious expression on his face. "No booze, huh? You're a cautious one, aren't you?" he said, taking a sip of the ale in his mug. Michael shrugged. "I just prefer to keep a clear head," he said. Dylan nodded, taking another sip of his ale. "Can't say I blame you. This place can be dangerous if you're not careful," he said, his voice lowering to a whisper. Michael raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous? What do you mean?" he asked. Dylan leaned in closer, his freckled face growing serious. "There are a lot of unsavory characters who come through here. Criminals, smugglers, that sort of thing. You never know who you might run into," he said, his eyes scanning the room. "One of these unsavory characters happened to cross my path," Michael said calmly. Dylan became wary of Michael's words. As someone who prided himself on knowing every scoundrel in the city of Serpent Hall, he couldn't help but become curious when Michael mentioned encountering one of them. "Do you know who he is?" Dylan asked, his curiosity piqued. He hoped that Michael's response would shed some light on the type of person he was dealing with. "Cato, I believe," said Michael calmly. As soon as Michael mentioned the name, Cato, Dylan nearly spat out his ale. Cato was one of the most feared criminals in the waters outside the city, and Dylan couldn't believe that Michael had dealt with him and came out unscathed. The minion gritted his teeth in frustration and pushed harder, but to no avail. Michael didn't even flinch, let alone move. The patrons in the tavern watched in disbelief as the merman struggled to push down a seemingly drunk inferior. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Michael decided to show the merman how it was done. "Let me show you how to push someone," he said, raising his hand. With just 2 fingers, he pushed the merman with such force that the merman went flying through the tables until he crashed into the wall. "Ouch, I might have pushed too hard," Michael said, feigning concern. The tavern went completely silent, with everyone staring at Michael in shock and disbelief. They couldn't believe that a seemingly drunk inferior could possess such strength. Tertiz and his group of mermans were equally shocked and horrified. This was not supposed to happen. Inferiors were supposed to be weak and submissive, not strong enough to overpower a merman. Tertiz could feel his authority being challenged, and he didn't like it one bit. The silence in the tavern was deafening, with everyone frozen in shock and disbelief at what had just happened. They knew that this would be a moment that they would never forget, one that would be talked about for years to come. After snapping out of shock, Tertiz immediately stood up like his chair was on fire. He raised his hand and barked at his minions. "You're dead." Tertiz screamed, his minions quickly gathering around Michael with fists clenched and ready to beat him to a pulp. Their foolish minds still believed Michael to be an inferior, with only basic body strengthening cultivation, and assumed that what had happened to their friend was merely a fluke. Little did they know that they were about to learn firsthand how powerful the Dark Lord truly was. As the minion dashed towards Michael, he attempted to grab him from behind, but Michael was 1 step ahead. Without turning around, Michael quickly grabbed the minion's hand and pulled him forward. With a sudden movement, Michael headbutted the minion with a little force, breaking the merman's cheekbone. Blood spurted out from the wound, splattering onto the nearby tables and floor. The other minions were stunned at what they saw. They had never seen an inferior with such strength before and began to question whether their assumptions about Michael were correct. Tertiz himself was taken aback but quickly regained his composure and charged towards Michael, bellowing with rage. Meanwhile, the patrons in the tavern were now in a state of panic. Some tried to flee, while others hid under tables or behind pillars, hoping to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. The sound of breaking glass and furniture filled the air as the fight between Michael and the mermans escalated. As Tertiz and his minions converged on Michael, he remained collected and composed. They may have outnumbered him but were unaware of his true strength. They could feel the tension in the air and knew that something big was about to happen. Some of them had already left, not wanting to get caught up in the violence that was sure to come. Others stayed, their eyes fixed on the 2 men, waiting to see who would emerge victorious. The aftermath of the fight left the tavern in shambles. Tables and chairs were overturned, and broken pieces of wood were scattered all over the floor. The air was thick with the smell of blood and smoke from the fire spell. Burn marks and scorch stains marred the walls and floor, evidence of the intense battle that had just taken place. Michael nonchalantly reached into his pocket, maintaining the facade of drunkenness, and retrieved the shark-headed medallion, making sure Tertiz could see it. "No hard feelings, Tertiz," he said, studying Tertiz's expression closely to see how he would react to the medallion. Just as Michael expected, Tertiz looked changed when he laid his eyes on the medallion. Where did you get it?" Tertiz's question came out in a stutter as his eyes locked onto the shark-headed medallion in Michael's hand. He couldn't believe that his uncle, who held a high position in the hierarchy, would give his creation to a mere inferior. His face twisted in a mixture of shock and anger, his nostrils flaring as he gritted his teeth. He looked as if he had been struck by a bolt of lightning, his body tense and ready to pounce. Michael approached Tertiz with careful steps, feigning drunkenness, but as he neared him, he stumbled on a loose wooden board and crashed to the ground. Tertiz lunged forward, grabbing a nearby wooden mug and smashing it on Michael's head before he could react. As Michael lay motionless on the floor, Tertiz smirked, thinking he had won. Suddenly, the sound of boots stomping on the wooden floor echoed through the tavern as the backup arrived just in time. As the merman soldiers entered the tavern, the sight of their silver scales and imposing figures sent a shiver down the spines of the patrons. They assumed that the drunk man who had just taken down Tertis Group was as good as dead. The minions lay on the ground, groaning in pain and bleeding, their bodies battered and broken. The merman soldiers clenched their fists, their eyes filled with a glint of killing intent. However, Tertis raised his hand, halting them in their tracks. "Stop," he commanded. "Don't kill him. Take him to my uncle. He needs to answer some questions before he pays for what he just did." Unbeknownst to them, that was precisely Michael's plan. He wanted to be taken to Eric, and it had worked perfectly, except for Dylan, who had bolted out of the tavern, leaving him behind. Michael wasn't surprised, as Mutrad had warned him that Dylan was a coward. Chapter 894. Creator of the medallion. The merman soldiers lifted Michael's limp body with ease and hefted him over their broad shoulders as they made their way out of the dimly lit tavern. The other patrons watched them go, some with relief that the violent altercation was over and others with a sense of foreboding at the sight of the fearsome mermans. The poor bartender let out a long sigh, his eyes flitting to the broken tables and chairs scattered around the room. He knew it would be a long night of cleaning up and repairs, and he hoped that the merman soldiers would at least provide some compensation for the damages. Outside, the soldiers tossed Michael into the back of a carriage with rough hands, not bothering to be gentle with their captive. The carriage itself was a sturdy, well-crafted vehicle with dark wood paneling and ornate carvings. The horses pulling the carriage were equally impressive, with long black manes that whipped in the wind as they galloped toward Eric's place. As they traveled, Michael kept his eyes closed, pretending to be unconscious. But even with his eyes shut, he could sense the passing images of the garden through the carriage's small windows. The lush greenery and colorful blooms seemed to blur together as they sped by, a stark contrast to the grim situation he found himself in. The carriage rolled to a stop before an imposing manor nestled among the grand estates of the noble district. The mansion's facade was a sight to behold, with its ornate marble columns that soared high into the sky and its intricately carved wooden doors that were taller than a grown man. The estate's expansive garden was a stunning sight, with colorful flowers that bloomed in profusion and trimmed hedges that were shaped into intricate designs. The garden was surrounded by a tall, ivy-covered brick wall that provided a sense of privacy and security. The front entrance of the manor was guarded by two fierce-looking mermans in gleaming armor, standing at attention like statues. As the carriage rolled up to the entrance, the merman guards saluted and opened the doors for their comrades, who carried Michael out and carried him inside the manor. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior, with high ceilings, intricately carved furniture, and chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds in the light. The floors were made of polished marble, and the walls were adorned with paintings and tapestries depicting myth and legend scenes. As Michael was carried through the halls of the manor, he couldn't help but marvel at the wealth and power on display. He knew that Eric must be an incredibly influential figure in the city to own such a grand estate. He remained still pretending to be unconscious, biding his time until he could make his move. His upper body was akin to that of an elf, possessing an ethereal beauty that captivated the hearts and minds of all those who beheld him. His long, flowing hair was the color of the ocean at sunset, and his eyes were the color of the deepest, darkest sea. He wore an elegant robe of shimmering blue silk that seemed to change color with every movement he made. His features were graceful and delicate, yet there was an unmistakable aura of power and authority about him. Tertis dropped to one knee and bowed his head respectfully. "Uncle, I bring urgent news," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Eric looked up from his scrolls, his gaze sweeping over Tertis and Michael. "I can see that," he said in a gravelly voice, with a hint of disdain. "Who is this man you've brought with you?" Tertis stood up and began to describe in detail how Michael had attacked them in the tavern and how he had seen the shark head medallion on him. As he spoke, Eric listened attentively, his face revealing no emotion. Tertis carefully recounted the events of the fight, making sure not to reveal too much information that might make Eric think that they had been defeated by an inferior. He wanted Eric to understand that it was Michael who needed to be punished and not them for being overpowered by him. When Tertiz finished, there was a moment of silence before Eric spoke. "You have done well to bring this matter to my attention, Tertiz," he said finally. "It seems we must take action to ensure that this medallion does not fall into the wrong hands." Eric's advanced cultivation at the soul refining stage made him impervious to threats from cultivators at the body strengthening stage. He was quick to dismiss his guards upon learning of Michael's presence. Tertiz and Michael were left alone in the room with Eric, except for the two imposing guards stationed at the door. As Eric listened intently to Tertiz's account of the events, the guards stood at attention, their eyes scanning the room for any signs of danger. These were not ordinary guards but elite warriors at the fusion stage, trained to defend their merman lord at all costs. Eric's sharp gaze locked on Tertiz as he demanded, "Where is the medallion you saw?" Tertiz's hands trembled slightly as he fumbled through Michael's pockets and extracted the shark head medallion. He extended it towards Eric with a bowed head, careful not to make eye contact. Eric snatched the medallion from Tertiz's outstretched hand and held it up to the light. As he studied the intricate details of the medallion, his face twisted into a scowl. The medallion was made of dark, gleaming metal, with sharp, jagged edges that looked as if they could easily draw blood. The shark's head was intricately detailed, with razor-sharp teeth and piercing, malevolent eyes that seemed to follow Eric's every movement. Eric's fingers traced the grooves of the medallion as if searching for something, his expression growing darker by the second.